Chapter 4876. He was already puzzled when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's terrifying techniques. He didn't expect Di Beichen to have such techniques as well. Could it be that the techniques of the lower realms were already unknown to the cultivators of the upper realms? Even though his heart was filled with shock, he wasn't in the mood to think about it carefully. The most important thing now was to protect his own life. Therefore, even though his body was extremely weak, he still tried his best to move away. As long as he could get away from this aura, he would still have a chance of survival. After exchanging blows with Di Beichen, Jun Lingxuan discovered that Di Beichen's cultivation had also reached the nebula realm. This discovery shocked him. He clearly remembered that when Xiao Sou told him before, Di Beichen was only at the starlight realm. How could Di Beichen reach the nebula realm in such a short time? One had to know that this level of strength was very outstanding even among the cultivators of the upper realms. How did Di Beichen do it? Most importantly, Di Beichen's cultivation had increased so quickly in such a short time. How did he cultivate? Shock and doubt lingered in Jun Lingxuan's mind, but he couldn't think about it carefully. He could only do his best to deal with Di Beichen's attacks. Both of their strengths were about the same. In addition, he was already injured, so his combat strength was affected. If not for the fact that Di Beichen's martial techniques were still slightly lacking, he wouldn't be a match for him at all. Under such circumstances, he would definitely lose his life if he was slightly distracted. Di Beichen's killing intent was no joke. He only wanted to tear him into pieces. Xiao Sou originally thought that the cultivation of the man in front of her wasn't very high. After all, she had never seen him before. She only knew that he was Bailey Hongzhuang's friend. The reason she remembered him was because he was extremely handsome. Even when he stood beside Di Beichen, he didn't pale in comparison. Handsome men were always easy to remember. Therefore, even if she had only seen him once, she would still remember him clearly. However, after exchanging blows, she realized that her opponent's strength was not to be underestimated. What she found most unbelievable was that her cultivation was actually inferior to his. How is this possible? Xiao Sou immediately felt that the world was too crazy. Why were these fellows from the lower realms so powerful? This shouldn't have happened at all. After realizing that she was not Mo Yunjua's opponent, Xiao Sou's mind was racing. Young Master Jun, I have an escape talisman that was given to me by my family. It is my greatest means of survival. However, this escape talisman can only take 2 people away at most, and once I use it, I don't know where I'll end up. The only thing we can be sure of is that we will still be in the Immortal Cloud's secret realm. If it doesn't work, then we'll just leave. Xiao Sou transmitted her voice to Jun Lingxuan. This was her last resort. This escape talisman was an extremely precious treasure to her family. As long as she had this escape talisman, it was no different from having another life. If it wasn't for her identity as the Saint of the Light Maiden, her family would never have given her this escape talisman. She had never thought that she would have to use it here. However, based on the current situation, it couldn't be helped. When Jun Lingxuan heard that Xiao Sou had an escape talisman, his eyes lit up with joy. Chapter 4877. The art of runes was an extremely profound lost art, and runes were of great help to cultivators. Among them, the escape talisman was a very precious one. As the name implied, it was a rune used for escape. As long as the cultivator held the escape talisman in his hand, once he crushed it, he could escape to any place. The stronger the escape talisman, the further the escape distance. In the past, the art of runes could be said to be extremely popular, but later on, the art of runes gradually declined, and the number of rune masters became fewer and fewer. Needless to say, rune masters who could make high-grade runes were even rarer. Therefore, the value of high-grade runes became higher and higher. Among them, the escape talisman could be said to be the most valuable rune, because the escape talisman was tantamount to giving the cultivator another life. Its effect was greater than medicinal pills. The escape talisman that Xiao Sou's family gave her was definitely not a low grade, and it was enough to get them out of the current predicament. However, When he heard Xiao Sou say that this escape talisman could only take 2 people away, his heart turned cold again. In this way, it meant that only he and Xiao Sou could leave, and there was absolutely no possibility of Jun Zitao leaving. "No, I can't give up on Zitao," Jun Lingxuan said solemnly. Seeing Jun Lingxuan so persistent, Xiao Sou frowned. Previously, she really didn't think that Jun Lingxuan and Jun Zitao would have such a deep brotherly relationship. If it was an ordinary person, they would have left long ago. After all, no one's life was more important than their own. However, after seeing Jun Lingxuan's loyal and righteous appearance, her favorable impression of him deepened. Perhaps it was because she had seen too many heartless people. Such a loyal and righteous person seemed to be very precious. Previously, she only felt that Jun Lingxuan's conditions were very suitable for her, but now she suddenly felt that this man indeed had his charm. After Bailey Hongzhuang thought of the purification effect of the light energy, she did not hesitate to use it. She didn't know how effective the power of light was on the soul, but she believed that it would have a certain effect on evil cultivators. As Bailey Hongzhuang channeled her radiant force, a look of fear appeared in the evil cultivator's eyes. "You're actually a light attribute cultivator?" The evil cultivator was completely dumbfounded. She had never expected Bailey Hongzhuang to possess the light attribute. This attribute was the most incompatible with her cultivation method. Just based on this point alone, it was impossible for her to successfully possess him. Looking at the sorcerer's surprised expression, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that her method was indeed effective. She had never used her elemental powers before, so it was normal that the sorcerer did not know about it. The most important thing was that this guy paid so much attention to his appearance. He had been studying how his appearance met her requirements, but he didn't even try to understand his own attributes. She was speechless. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang activated her cultivation method, and a steady stream of light energy began to gather in her mind. She wanted to use the radiant force to completely drive the evil cultivator's soul out and take back control of her body. Ever since she started fighting with the evil cultivator, she had already lost control of her body. They had been constantly fighting, and the control of her body was constantly changing. Chapter 4878. She could not help but worry whenever she thought of this situation. She could only hope that she could expel this damned soul as soon as possible. The evil cultivator's soul shrieked in agony as the light energy's purifying effect was instantly revealed. She was only in the form of a soul, so the light energy was the most effective against her. Furthermore, she had been using evil methods to strengthen her soul all these years. When she encountered the light energy, she was like a mouse that had seen a cat. She had no way of retaliating at all. "Get out of here now." Bailey Hongzhuang's soul suddenly shone brightly under the illumination of the light energy. Her delicate face was as pure and holy as a fairy as it emitted a bright and dazzling light. Under this pure and flawless light, the evil cultivator's soul felt as if it was being roasted on a hot fire. A sizzling sound could be heard. Wisps of black gas began to seep out from her soul. Her spiritual energy was instantly weakened, and even the size of her soul had shrunk. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang could sense that the evil cultivator's pressure on her had lessened. She could not help but feel delighted. It looks like she has the upper hand in this battle. Damn it! The evil cultivator could not help but cry out in alarm. She immediately tried to escape from Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. However, how could Bailey Hongzhuang let her leave so easily? Her sea of consciousness had been severely damaged because of this damned fellow. It was not in her nature to let her leave just like that. Go to hell. Bailey Hongzhuang channeled the light energy with all her might and unleashed the purifying effect to its maximum. Sizzle, sizzle. The purifying power repeatedly roasted the soul as if it was trying to purify all the evil in it. "Let me go now." The evil cultivator struggled with all her might. The purifying power caused her immense pain, and her expression turned malevolent. "You're thinking of leaving after wreaking havoc in my sea of consciousness? Not so easy." Bailey Hongzhuang scoffed icily. A damn fellow like you actually wanted to absorb Xiaohei's blood essence. Let me purify it for you. Seeing this, the evil cultivator could not help but beg for mercy. Miss, I was wrong. I shouldn't have had such thoughts about you. Please let me go. Why didn't you think that way when you tried to devour my soul? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold and sharp. Even now, she could not help but feel afraid. If it wasn't for the fact that he was of the light attribute and had a restraining effect on it, the consequences would have been unimaginable if the other party had succeeded in seizing his body. She wanted this soul to be completely destroyed here. At the very least, she couldn't let it help Jun Lingxuan in any way, lest it bring more trouble to them. This sorcerer was so vicious. Perhaps all of Jun Lingxuan's evil ideas were related to her. She would only be at ease if he was dead. Noticing that Bailey Hongzhuang was determined and had no intention of letting go, the sorcerer's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she could only beg for mercy. She had spent so much effort over the years to persevere until now. She did not want to disappear just like that. Bailey Hongzhuang ignored him completely. Under the scorching heat, she gradually realized that the black fog in the evil cultivator's black soul was gradually dissipating, and the remaining soul was becoming transparent. Is this soul force? Chapter 4879. Even in her previous life, Bailey Hongzhuang had not done much research on spiritual energy. Hence, she did not understand the situation in front of her very well. However, after some investigation, she realized that this energy was extremely pure. It seemed like it could be absorbed. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang tried to use her spiritual sense to approach the transparent and pure energy. Soon after, she realized that the energy had directly merged with her spiritual sense and strengthened her spiritual energy. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if her spiritual sense had encountered a great tonic. It greedily absorbed the energy and continued to strengthen itself. Noticing this, she could not help but feel elated. Ever since she had mastered the art of summoning, she had been eager to increase her spiritual sense as soon as possible. Only by increasing her spiritual sense would she be able to summon stronger demonic beasts. At the same time, she would be able to extend the duration of her battle. However, increasing one's spiritual sense was much more difficult than increasing one's cultivation. Fortunately, she had previously refined pills to increase her spiritual sense, which had helped. However, it was still not enough for her. She never thought that encountering the evil cultivator's possession would result in such a reward. After regaining control of her body, Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly opened her eyes and observed the situation around her. With one look, she realized that Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue had already appeared. At this moment, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were resisting their attacks with great difficulty. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that she did not have to worry anymore. Master, are you all right? Baisher had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's situation. When it saw that the latter had opened her eyes and reacted, its bright and sparkling eyes immediately filled with joy. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. I'm all right. Don't worry. That's great. Baisher could not hide its joy. It hurriedly shouted at Di Beichen. Master is all right. Di Beichen's attack landed mercilessly on Jun Lingxuan's body. When he thought of his wife being in danger, he couldn't wait to tear this guy apart. Under Di Beichen's ferocious and powerful attacks, Jun Lingxuan appeared to be extremely exhausted. He had already expended a lot of energy in the previous battle, and now he was injured. Coupled with the suppression of his opponent's aura, it was difficult for him to even move. If both sides were fighting at their peak, he would not have been suppressed like this. This feeling made him feel extremely sullen. Suddenly, Baisher's joyful voice could be heard. After Di Beichen heard this voice, his gloomy face suddenly brightened up like a 10,000-year-old ice melting like a spring breeze. He was distracted and looked behind him. It was only when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang approaching him that he calmed down. Now you're worthless. A sharp light flashed in Di Beichen's eyes. Previously, He had been worried because he wanted to know his wife's current situation. Now, he no longer had to worry about this problem. He no longer had to worry about attacking. When Jun Lingxuan saw Bailey Hongzhuang's situation, a thick sense of astonishment appeared in his eyes. However, he did not feel despair because of this. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. He knew how powerful the soul that had attached itself to him was. As long as she tried to take over his body, no ordinary cultivator would be a match for her. Chu Chu was only in her 20s. How could Bailey Hongzhuang's soul power compare to that of an old monster? Hence, the only possibility was that she had succeeded in taking over his body. Chapter 4880. At that thought, Jun Lingxuan's eyes lit up. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't exist anymore, Di Beichen wouldn't be willing to do anything to her, given his feelings for her. In this way, they had the absolute advantage again. It seems that you've succeeded. Help me kill him, Jun Lingxuan said to Bailey Hongzhuang. Following Jun Lingxuan's words, everyone present was stunned. Their eyes were filled with confusion. They didn't understand what he meant. Xiao Sou and Jun Zitao also looked at Jun Lingxuan in bewilderment. Was he so anxious that he spoke without thinking? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't wait to kill them. Why would she help them? It was even less likely that she would kill Di Beichen. Of all the people, only Bailey Hongzhuang understood what Jun Lingxuan meant. Her eyes turned even darker and colder. This damn guy wanted her to kill Di Beichen. Fortunately, she hadn't been successfully possessed. Otherwise, if Di Beichen was killed by him, it would be the most painful thing. She couldn't imagine that scene at all. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang sped up, and a dazzling smile beamed on her exquisite face. I'll help you. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction, the smile in Jun Lingxuan's eyes gradually deepened. It seemed that his guess was not wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang really didn't exist anymore. With Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, he might be able to completely destroy the Di family. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. For a moment, Jun Lingxuan's heart was filled with wishful thinking, as if all the problems could be completely solved in an instant. Di Beichen looked at Jun Lingxuan in confusion. What on earth did you do to my wife? Jun Lingxuan chuckled, and his eyes were full of sarcasm. You'll find out soon enough. After approaching Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang attacked him without hesitation. Wife, what's wrong? The look in Di Beichen's eyes changed. He stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. He couldn't believe that she would attack him. Mo Yinjue was also in disbelief. Hongzhuang, what are you doing? Meanwhile, Jun Lingxuan's smile couldn't be prouder. She's not your wife anymore. She's mine now. As he spoke, Jun Lingxuan looked happily at Bailey Hongzhuang. You should be satisfied now. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. She then slowly walked to Jun Lingxuan's side. This physical body is indeed not bad. I'm very satisfied. Ha! Jun Lingxuan laughed. Although this result was beyond his expectations, when he thought about it carefully, there were many benefits. Just as Di Beichen and the others were feeling puzzled and Jun Lingxuan was secretly rejoicing, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly attacked Jun Lingxuan's chest fiercely. Go to hell. Her cold voice was filled with a sharp, murderous intent. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear and sharp eyes flashed with a dazzling and intimidating light. Her fist, which was filled with tyrannical energy, smashed fiercely into Jun Lingxuan's chest and sent him flying. He didn't even have time to react before his injuries worsened. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Jun Lingxuan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. His mind raced, but he couldn't figure out what had just happened. Chapter 4881. Turning her back on him was the only possibility that Jun Lingxuan could think of. It was likely that this sorcerer wanted to continue staying in the Immortal Cloud secret realm as Bailey Hongzhuang after successfully possessing her body. That was why she made such a decision. Jun Lingxuan, did you really think that the sorcerer could successfully possess her body? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. Unfortunately, your wishful thinking is wrong. Di Beichen and the rest, who had been in a state of shock and confusion, finally understood what was going on when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. So everything that Bailey Hongzhuang had done earlier was just an act, and it almost scared them to death. However, when they heard the words in her words, they couldn't help but be stunned. Possession. His ink-black eyes were filled with shock and fury. Di Beichun stared anxiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Someone tried to possess your body? Even though he had never experienced it before, he knew that it was an extremely dangerous thing. Once the possession was successful, even if Bailey Hongzhuang was still alive, her soul would no longer belong to her. He never thought that such a situation would occur in the Immortal Cloud's secret realm. Jun Lingxuan would actually do such a vicious thing to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. That's right. The reason why I didn't react earlier was because a soul wanted to possess my body. Hearing this, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue finally understood what was going on. Previously, they couldn't figure out what was going on because the cultivators who had come here were all young disciples from the various large families. It was almost impossible for possession to happen to them, so they didn't think in this direction. Now that they understood, they felt a wave of fear in their hearts. How dangerous was that? If Bailey Hongzhuang had not held on, she would have disappeared into thin air. Jun Lingxuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. Countless thoughts quickly emerged in his mind. He even suspected that the sorcerer was faking it because Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't possibly defeat the sorcerer. Impossible. How did you survive? Jun Lingxuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. He understood the evil cultivator's strength too well. Even Chen Feng would not be able to survive. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a cold and arrogant smile. His soul energy wasn't strong enough, so I killed him. Impossible. Jun Lingxuan couldn't help but shout. This is absolutely impossible. You can try if you don't believe me. See if you can still contact her. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. Her gaze was calm, without the slightest bit of worry. Seeing this, Jun Lingxuan tried to call the sorcerer several times, but found that there was no response. His face became pale and ashen as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It seemed that he had really lost today. It's just that he couldn't understand how Bailey Hongzhuang was able to resist the possession. Why did all these things that he thought were impossible all happen? Jun Lingxuan, you can rest in peace now. Di Beichen's gaze was cold as the sharp sword in his hand stabbed out. This is the interest I collected from your Jun family. However, you don't have to feel lonely because they will accompany you soon. Miss Xiao, quickly save my elder brother. Jun Zitao couldn't help but shout after noticing that Jun Lingxuan was helpless. Chapter 4882. When Mo Yunjue saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was safe and sound, he felt relieved and immediately sped up his attack on Xiao So. Only after dealing with these fellows would they be able to have a proper discussion and understand the situation that had just transpired. Xiao So had been struggling under Mo Yunjue's attacks and wished that she could crush the escape talisman as soon as possible so that she could escape. Then, when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance and Jun Lingxuan's special reaction, she felt that the situation might take a turn for the better, so she had been waiting for it. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang attacking Jun Lingxuan, she knew that if they didn't leave now, they would have to stay here forever. Hence, when she saw Di Beichen attacking Jun Lingxuan, she did not hesitate to crush the escape talisman. She felt very sorry for Jun Shitao, but her escape talisman could only bring the two of them away. She had no other choice. Just as Di Beichen's attack was about to land on Jun Lingxuan's body, a ray of light suddenly flashed, and Jun Lingxuan's figure disappeared right in front of him. Seeing this, Di Beichen could not help but stare blankly. A trace of astonishment appeared in his eyes, and then his face became gloomy. It's an escape talisman. During this period of time, he had been studying formations, and because runes were a similar method, he had some understanding of them. Something that could make Jun Lingxuan disappear in an instant could only be an escape talisman. There was no other possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with astonishment. At the same time, Mo Yunjue's voice rang out. Xiao So has disappeared as well. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and their faces were filled with unwillingness. They had been so close to making Jun Lingxuan stay, but they never thought that he would escape in the end. Damn it, that guy actually got away. The White Lion could not help but curse out loud. That guy had done all sorts of bad things, and the White Lion could not wait to tear him into pieces. Who would have thought that he would actually run away at the last moment? How could the beast not be angry? Bailey Hongzhuang also felt extremely unwilling, but she soon calmed down. Since they have escape talismans in their hands, no matter when we attack, they will be able to escape. The escape talisman itself was very powerful. As long as there was an opportunity to crush it, they would not be able to catch up. Unless they were much stronger than Jun Lingxuan and the others, they wouldn't be able to stop all this from happening. Obviously, they were unable to do so at the moment. Di Baichen nodded slightly. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou had run away. This indeed made him very unhappy, but he also understood that this was unavoidable. Escape talismans are extremely precious. I believe that even they don't have many of them. His eyes, which were as deep as the ocean, rippled with the light of deep thought. They had waited until the very last moment to attack. That must be their only escape talisman. That's right, that escape talisman must have been crushed by Xiao Sou. Mo Yunjue's cold and hard face carried a deep chill. Previously, she had been paying close attention to Jun Lingxuan's situation. It seems that she has been paying close attention to Jun Lingxuan. The two of them have left, but Jun Zitao has been left behind. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell upon Jun Zitao. Previously, he had been severely injured by her. Now, his situation seemed to be even worse than before. Chapter 4883. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Jun Zitao only glanced coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, it's useless for you to say these words to provoke me. I know that I've fallen into your hands today, but my big brother will avenge me sooner or later. Jun Zitao's eyes were filled with hatred. After sweeping his burning anger across Di Baichen and the others, he chose to commit suicide by biting his tongue without hesitation. Seeing Jun Zitao's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were stunned. By the time they wanted to stop him, it was already too late. I didn't expect Jun Zitao to have such a strong character. Bailey Hongzhuang's cool and pleasant voice was filled with emotion. Although she was very disdainful of Jun Zitao, she was also a little surprised to see him make such a choice. He knows that he'll suffer even more if he falls into our hands, so he chose to end his own life first. Di Baichen's extremely dark eyes were cold and deep. His voice was low and magnetic, and there was a hint of contemplation. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her gaze to Xiao He and Xiao Bai. They had already fallen unconscious. What's wrong with Xiao He and Xiao Bai? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with concern. Previously, she had been too anxious to deal with Jun Lingxuan and the others to ask about it in detail. Xiao He was very weak because her blood essence was absorbed, but her condition improved a little. Did something happen after that? Why is Xiao Bai also unconscious? Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Di Baichen and Baisher exchanged glances. Their expressions were complicated and helpless. After noticing the expressions of the two people, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes became a bit more serious. What happened? Why do you have such expressions? Master, White Lion said hesitantly. It recounted everything that had happened in detail. After hearing all of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned extremely ugly. What did you say? Xiao He chose to self-destruct? Bailey Hongzhuang could no longer remain calm. Her delicate face was filled with nervousness and disbelief. Self-detonation was something that couldn't be reversed. Hongzhuang, don't be too anxious. Di Baichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand with concern on his face. Although we don't know the exact situation of Xiao He and Xiao Bai, at least Xiao He hasn't disappeared. Previously, when they saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai make such a choice, they were actually very sad. However, later on, they realized that Xiao He's body, which had swelled up due to her self-detonation, had gradually shrunk back. In the end, She had fallen into a coma along with Xiao Bai. From his point of view, this should be a good thing. At least there had been no explosion, and Xiao Hei's physical body was still there. Even if this matter seemed a little unbelievable, as long as the outcome was good, it didn't matter how unbelievable it was. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently and quickly rushed to Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's side to take their pulse. Bai Shi and Xiao Xuanzi stayed by Bailey Hongzhuang's side in concern. They could not help but ask, "How are they now?" After taking their pulse, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression gradually became strange. Their pulse is a little complicated. It seems like there's a lot of energy running amok in their bodies. However, their life force hasn't been affected. The strangest thing is that this energy is constantly intertwining in their bodies. Chapter 4884. Their lives shouldn't be in danger. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and said, "However, their current situation is rather mysterious. Even I can't explain it clearly. As long as their lives aren't in danger, it's fine," Di Beichan said slowly. "I didn't expect these two contracted beasts to be so powerful. Usually, when they choose to self-destruct, it would be useless. They actually manage to turn everything around. It's really rare." Even the usually calm Mo Yunjue could not help but be shocked when he heard this result. If this had not happened before his eyes, he would definitely not have believed it. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's existence is indeed very strange. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Until now, apart from the White Dragon, no one else knows anything about them. In fact, because the White Dragon had lost its memory, it only knew Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's names. It did not know anything about their origins or anything else. As long as they're safe, we can rest assured. The White Lion heaved a sigh of relief. I knew that these two fellows wouldn't leave so easily. Although they were always noisy and wished for each other to disappear, they knew very well that this was just empty talk. Bailey Hongzhuang kept thinking. Although Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai were always inseparable, they were still two living beings after all. Now, the energy and aura between the two were gradually mixing and circulating, forming a state where they were one in the other. This was very mysterious. Could it be that Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai had other special characteristics that had not been discovered? Bailey Hongzhuang could only keep this doubt in her heart. She could only understand this point when Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai woke up. As there was a restriction in the mystic realm, she could not put Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai into the Chaos Ring. Therefore, she could only bring them with her. Fortunately, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai were not very big when they were unconscious. Therefore, it was very convenient to bring them with her. The White Lion immediately volunteered to take on this responsibility. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai rested on its back. "Let's find a place to rest first." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichan and Mo Yunjue. "I need to go into seclusion for a while." Hearing this, Di Beichan and Xiao Bai immediately understood and nodded. "All right, wife, are you seriously injured?" Di Beichan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. Although she was not seriously injured, she had been affected by the soul's possession. Xiao Bai's. Xiao Hei's Bailey Hongzhuang had a helpless look on her face. Her sea of consciousness had previously been used as a battlefield, and now it could be described as a scene of devastation. However, because the previous matter was too urgent, she did not have the time to fix it. Now that everything was over, she naturally had to repair her sea of consciousness. One had to know that the sea of consciousness was the foundation of a person. If something were to happen to it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Di Beichan and Mo Yunjue naturally understood the importance of this matter. After finding a more secluded place, they stopped. "Wife, you can cultivate in seclusion here. We will help you keep watch." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and didn't say anything more. She immediately went into seclusion. Chapter 4885. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully examined the situation in her sea of consciousness and discovered that her initially smooth and flat sea of consciousness was now filled with cracks. This caused her mental state to become extremely unstable. Previously, she had been too anxious and had not had the time to understand the situation in detail. Now that she had a better understanding, she understood how serious the situation was. It was a good thing that she had absorbed the power of that spirit. Even though her sea of consciousness had been severely damaged, her mental state was much stronger than before. It was only a matter of time before her sea of consciousness could be repaired. Jun Lingxuan had thought that he was going to die by Di Beichen's hands. He had even closed his eyes to endure the consequences. However, the expected pain did not appear. Only then did he open his eyes. Looking around, he found that he was already in another strange environment. Where was the shadow of Di Beichen and the others? What's going on? Jun Lingxuan was shocked at first, but when he noticed Xiao Sowen next to him, he finally understood. You've used an escape talisman? That's right. Xiao Sou's face was filled with relief. It was a good thing that her father had given her this escape talisman before they had entered the Divine Cloud secret realm. Otherwise, she would have lost her life by now. Xiao Sou smiled at Jun Lingxuan at the thought of this. It was really too dangerous. If it hadn't been for this life-saving talisman, both of us would have lost our lives. She still felt a lingering fear when she recalled the situation. She never thought that they would be able to completely turn the tables in the end. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang had been rather lucky. If it had not been for the appearance of Di Beichen and the others, they would have been the ones to emerge victorious. Jun Lingxuan was shocked. He quickly scanned his surroundings, and when he realized that Jun Zitao was nowhere to be seen, his expression turned extremely ugly. Where's Zitao? Hearing Jun Lingxuan's question, the smile on Xiao Sou's face froze. Her expression was apologetic as she said, Young Master Jun, my escape talisman can only take 2 people away so. Jun Zitao has lost his life in their hands. Jun Lingxuan's face was filled with gloom and heaviness. I said that I would not give up on him. Young Master Jun, we had no other choice. Xiao Sou explained, if I hadn't crushed this escape talisman just now, then the 2 of us would have died together. Now that we're still alive, at least we can avenge him. I believe that second young master will understand. However, Jun Lingxuan remained silent. Looking at the relaxed smile on Xiao Sou's face, he only felt that it was particularly dazzling. Of Jun Lingxuan. Jun Lingxuan. Since young, he had always had the closest relationship with Shi Tao. Regardless of whether it was eating, cultivating, or anything else, they had always been together. They had even sworn an oath that no matter what, they would never abandon each other because they were the best of brothers. However, at this critical moment of life and death, he actually ran away. Jun Lingxuan shut his eyes in agony. When he opened them again, his dark eyes were filled with the sparks of hatred. Zitao, don't worry. I will avenge you with my own hands to comfort your soul in heaven. Chapter 4886. 3 days later, the bright and beautiful sun shone on the earth, emitting a warm aura. The golden radiance shone through the gaps of the leaves and shone on the white figure, dyeing it with a layer of noble and holy golden light. The woman's eyebrows were like emerald feathers, her skin was like snow, her waist was like a bundle of silk, and her exquisite and perfect facial features were like a work of art that was meticulously carved by the heavens. All the beauty was placed on her, blooming with a breathtaking beauty. Beside her, 2 handsome figures, one black and one white, stood on both sides of her. The white-robed man was as noble as a god, while the black-robed man was as cold as ice. Despite the 2 different temperaments, their faces were breathtaking. At this moment, although the 2 men were cultivating, they would occasionally open their eyes to observe the situation of the white-robed woman. Di Beichen's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. He could feel that Bailey Hongzhuang's aura was gradually strengthening. Looking at the situation, I'm afraid that Hongzhuang is going to break through again. A knowing smile bloomed on his handsome face. Initially, he was still worried about Bailey Hongzhuang's situation. However, the situation that happened later made his worries dissipate. Because Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation had already broken through from Starlight Realm Level 6 to Starlight Realm Level 7. If she didn't fix her problem, she wouldn't be able to break through. And now, he could feel that Bailey Hongzhuang's aura had increased. He was afraid that she would break through to Starlight Realm Level 8 this time. Although Hong Zhuang went through a dangerous situation, from the looks of it, she also gained a lot of benefits. This can be considered as the beginning of the end of bitterness. Mo Yunjue's lips bloomed into a sincere smile, causing the cold lines on his face to become gentler. There was less of a trace of coldness and more of a trace of gentleness. Sure enough, opportunities and risks coexist. His deep and dark eyes were filled with joy. I think Hong Zhuang will come out of seclusion after breaking through. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. Let's wait patiently. Bai Shi and Xiao Xuanzi were also overjoyed. Originally, it would take a lot of effort to raise one's cultivation by one level. They never thought that Bailey Hong Zhuang would be able to break through 2 levels in such a short period of time. If news of this progress were spread, who knew how many people would be envious? Boom! Following the sound of a breakthrough, Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips slowly curled into a bright smile before she opened her eyes. Her bright eyes were filled with joy and surprise. I didn't expect that I would be able to break through 2 levels with the help of that spiritual energy. Bailey Hong Zhuang sighed to herself. Not only did his cultivation increase by 2 levels, the increase in his divine sense was even more obvious. This was truly a great harvest. When I noticed Bailey Hong Zhuang's breakthrough, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue had stopped cultivating. When they saw Bailey Hong Zhuang coming out of seclusion, the 2 of them went up to greet her. Wife, have you completely recovered? His handsome face was filled with a warm smile. Even though he had already guessed the result, he still couldn't help but ask. Seeing the deep concern in Di Beichen's eyes and the faint warmth from his body, Bailey Hong Zhuang's lustrous and watery eyes became sparkling. She nodded her head playfully. I'm fine now. That's good. Di Beichen breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did he completely relax. Chapter 4887. Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips curled into a gentle smile. Don't worry, I'm fine now. Although it was very dangerous for the sorcerer to possess my body, I'm still safe and sound. I've also gained a lot. Sorcerer? Di Beichen's handsome face froze. What exactly happened? Jun Lingxuan has always had a sorcerer's soul by his side helping him. This time, the sorcerer took a fancy to my physical body and chose to possess it. However, he was purified by my light energy in the end. If it weren't for the fact that I'm of the light attribute, I would have been in deep trouble this time. Her light and pleasant voice was filled with emotion. However, I've also profited from this disaster. My spiritual sense has been greatly improved, and my cultivation has also improved. If I encounter such a situation again in the future, I won't struggle so bitterly like before. After repairing her sea of consciousness this time, she realized that her sea of consciousness was much stronger than before and had expanded a lot. The improvement was self-evident. So Jun Lingxuan has such a helper by his side. It's no wonder that he's always been so confident. Di Beichen's cold eyes flashed with anger. His gaze was as cold as snow. He won't be so lucky next time. How are Xiao He and Xiao Bai now? Bailey Hong Zhuang turned to look at Bai Shi and realized that Xiao He and Xiao Bai were still in a deep sleep and showed no signs of waking up. Bai Shi shook his head. Ever since that day, they've been sleeping like this. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang slowly walked over. After taking their pulse, she realized that their condition was still the same as before. There weren't many changes. It looks like Xiao He and Xiao Bai won't be waking up for a while. Although this incident has caused them some harm, it might also be an opportunity. Bailey Hong Zhuang's clear and bright eyes were filled with determination. She pursed her red lips. This was her judgment. They definitely will. Di Beichen comforted her gently. Bailey Hong Zhuang and the other 2 once again stepped on the path forward. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were still on Bai Shi's body. He used his fur to wrap Xiao He and Xiao Bai. These 2 little fellows were very small to begin with, so it wasn't a problem for them to stay on Bai Shi's body. Even so, Bai Shi still walked less, hoping that he could give Xiao He and Xiao Bai a comfortable environment as much as possible. Noticing Bai Shi's small actions, Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes became even gentler. Even though these little fellows were used to bickering with each other, they were very concerned for each other. You, Xiao, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bais, Hongzhuang, and pointed to a direction. Wifey, you can determine directions in the immortal cloud mystic realm? Di Baichen and Mo Yunjue's deep eyes were filled with confusion and amazement. Di Baichen and Mo Yunjue looked at each other. These few days, they had been randomly choosing a direction to walk in. It was completely based on luck. No, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and shook her head. Every place here has a different environment. It's all foggy. How can we know which direction to go? Then, Mo Yunjue's handsome brows furrowed. He was even more puzzled. Previously, I obtained a black stone in the Penglai Palace. All this time, I didn't know what it was used for, so I kept it in the Chaos Ring. Chapter 4888. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Baichen and Mo Yunjue's faces filled with astonishment. Is that the black stone from before? Di Baichen raised his handsome brows. He knew about this black stone as well. Back then, Bailey Hongzhuang had shown him this black stone. However, at that time, they had not been able to figure out what the stone was used for. They never thought that it would have a reaction in the upper realm. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right, it's that stone. That means that this stone is probably something that has been passed down from the upper realm. Di Baichen's eyes filled with understanding. No wonder we couldn't figure it out back then. So the answer lies here. Since we have a target, let's head in that direction. Mo Yunjue spoke without hesitation. They had been wandering around aimlessly in this place, so they had no idea where to go. No one knew where they would find a reward. Perhaps they would stumble upon a place that would bring them a bountiful harvest. Furthermore, the stone in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was clearly no ordinary object. The place that it was pointing to would definitely not be simple. The three of them looked at each other and smiled as they made the same decision in their hearts. This was a great opportunity. If they left the divine cloud secret realm, they would never be able to uncover the secret of this stone again. Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two hurried along as fast as they could. No one knew where the stone was leading them to, nor did they know if anyone would arrive first. The sooner they arrived, the more advantage they would have. Along the way, they would occasionally meet other cultivators. However, none of them were disciples of the Di family or the Lin family. Hence, everyone only met each other briefly before leaving. They had no intention of forming a team or competing against each other. I wonder where Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou have been transported to. Mo Yunjue furrowed his brows. He felt that the two of them would be trouble as long as they were alive. If he could get rid of these two guys earlier, it would save him a lot of trouble. The escape talisman in Xiao Sou's hands is probably not simple. Presumably, the teleportation distance should be quite far. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and said, the greater the power of the escape talisman, the further the teleportation distance. That escape talisman was Xiao Sou's life-saving measure. With her identity as the Holy Maiden of Light, her status in the Xiao clan must be the highest. Naturally, the escape talisman would not be simple. From the looks of it, we won't be able to meet them for a while. Di Baichen said in a low voice. His deep and enchanting eyes flashed with a trace of haze. His thought was the same as Mo Yunjue's. As long as these two guys were dealt with, they would be able to completely relax. We could try to see if we can meet Su Minglei along the way. Her black and white eyes rippled with a cold light. Regarding Su Minglei, Bailey Hongzhuang also clearly remembered him. If it wasn't for this damn fellow, he wouldn't have fallen into such a predicament. As long as he met him again, he definitely wouldn't let that guy slip away. Su Minglei from the Su family? Di Baichen looked inquiringly at Bailey Hongzhuang. He also made a move against you. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Only then did she explain the sequence of events. Although Su Minglei left before us, he obviously didn't travel as far as the escape talisman. We might meet him along the way. Chapter 4889. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang was looking forward to meeting Su Minglei along the way, it was a pity that this fellow's luck was pretty good. She had not seen his shadow for several days in a row. However, as they hurried along, they were getting closer and closer to the place that the black stone was pointing them to. The place that we're looking for should be not too far ahead. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. The feeling from the stone was getting clearer and clearer. It was clearly right in front of them. Hearing this, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's eyes lit up with joy. After hurrying along for such a long time, they finally arrived at their destination. As they gradually got closer, a white building appeared in their line of sight. The entire building was white and flashed with a bright and dazzling light. It was filled with endless nobility and holiness. A solemn and serene aura emanated from the building, causing their originally impetuous hearts to settle down inexplicably. There's actually a white building here. Could it be a historical remnant? Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with astonishment. Even though she had been saying that the place that the black stone was pointing them to would not be simple, when she saw this building, she realized that this was probably another historical remnant. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with astonishment. This white building reminded him of the Black Palace that he had seen in the lower realm. However, there was a fundamental difference between the two buildings. Nevertheless, they both emitted an aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. One could not help but feel reverence toward them. It's very possible. And Mo Yunjue was also shocked. Could this historical remnant also be the inheritance of a light attribute cultivator? A light attribute cultivator's power was white. Generally speaking, cultivators of other attributes would not choose this color when building historical remnants. Only light attribute cultivators liked this color the most. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. They had the same question in their minds. Then, the three of them walked forward without hesitation. As they gradually got closer, they heard a sound coming from not too far away. Seeing this, the three of their expressions changed slightly. They did not expect that other cultivators would have arrived before them. This remnant is really strange. There are clearly no restrictions, but I can't enter at all. That's right. When I first discovered this place, there weren't many people here. I didn't expect there to be more and more people waiting here. Most importantly, we don't know when this will end. The conversations were filled with complaints and annoyance, and soon after, the voices of conversation rang out one after another. Hearing this chaotic conversation, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. She didn't expect so many people to arrive before them. Wife, could the reason why they can't enter be because of this stone? Di Beichun raised his eyebrows. If the stone was pointing to this place, then it was very possible. I don't know. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. Let's go take a look first. Maybe we'll meet our teammates. The three of them smiled at each other and quickened their pace. After the three of them arrived, they noticed that there were more than 10 figures in their line of sight. At first glance, they noticed Di Xiaofeng's existence. Beichun, Hongzhuang, Yinju. The gentle voice was filled with surprise. Di Xiaofeng immediately stood up and looked at them with a smile. Chapter 4890. Big Brother. Di Beichun's handsome face also revealed a joyful smile. Are you alone? Di Xiaofeng shook his head and pointed to the other side. Qianqian and Ta Xing are also here. At the same time, Lin Qianqian and Lin Ta Xing also quickly walked over. Di Beichun, Hongzhuang, I didn't expect you to be so lucky to have gathered together so early. Lin Qianqian's face was filled with a surprised smile. Although she had not known Di Beichun and the others for a long time, she had a very good impression of them, so she was not unfamiliar with them at all. We also met not long ago, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Your luck is also very good. Don't mention it. I've been traveling alone all this time. I basically didn't meet any familiar cultivators along the way. The only people I met were from the Xiao family. Just thinking about it makes me sick. Lin Qianqian shook her head and sighed, looking very unlucky. She used to have a good impression of the Xiao family, but after this incident, she was full of disgust for them. Then you didn't fight with them, right? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. No. Lin Qianqian shrugged. Lin Qianqian shrugged. Although we are now rivals, we used to have a good relationship. So, we didn't say anything and just went around each other. That's pretty straightforward. Have you met any other cultivators? Lin Taxing looked at Di Beichen and lowered his voice. I heard that the Jun family and the Xiao family haven't found Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So yet. I don't know where they went. Long before entering the Immortal Cloud secret realm, they had already reached a consensus. As long as they met Jun Lingxuan and the others, they must find a way to deal with them. The younger generation's problems should be solved by the younger generation. If they could solve this big problem here, it was tantamount to doing a lot of help to the family. We met them, Di Beichun said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Lin Taxing and the others were all stunned. They immediately pulled Di Beichun and the other two to the side. You met them? Did anything happen? Di Xiaofeng's eyes were full of concern. Jun Zitao has been killed by us. Originally, we could have killed Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So together, but Xiao So had an escape talisman, so they escaped. Di Beichun said concisely. Following his words, Di Xiaofeng and the other two's eyes were filled with astonishment. What? Lin Qianqian couldn't help but raise her voice. When she realized her surroundings, she quickly covered her mouth. Jun Zitao is dead. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Xiao. Lin Qianqian stared at Di Beichun and the other two with wide eyes. How did you do it? Not only Lin Qianqian, but Di Xiaofeng and Lin Taxing also looked at Di Beichun and the other two with surprise. They were worried that Di Beichun and the other two would be at a disadvantage, but they didn't expect that the ones who fled were Jun Zitao and the other two. Although they were extremely disgusted with Jun Zitao and the other two, after so many years of dealing with them, they knew their strength. Logically speaking, Di Beichun and the other two shouldn't be a match for Jun Zitao and the other two. How could the result be the complete opposite? They were no match for us, so they fled. Di Beichun looked calm, as if he was talking about the excellent weather today. Chapter 4891. It's mainly because my wife is powerful. She beat them to the point that they couldn't resist. When Yunju and I appeared later, we basically didn't have to do anything, and they had already fled. Di Beichun's lips curled up slightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. His charming black eyes were full of pride. Are you kidding us? Di Xiaofeng and the other two stared at Di Beichun in a daze. They felt helpless in their hearts. Why didn't they notice that Di Beichun had the bad habit of showing off his love before? The pride between his eyebrows was obviously showing off that he had a good wife. What Beichun said is true. Mo Yunjue said quietly again. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of Di Xiaofeng and the others changed again. If it was only Di Beichun who said this, they would think that Di Beichun was joking because he was in a good mood. However, Mo Yunjue was different. According to their understanding, Mo Yunjue was a person who didn't joke. Since even he said so, could it be that all this was true? Are you sure? Lin Qianqian's eyes widened in disbelief. Then she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and explained, Hongzhuang, I don't mean to look down on you, but isn't this too unbelievable? Did you really beat them up single-handedly? Lin Qianqian looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with burning eyes. Previously, she only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy skills were extremely powerful, but she didn't have much expectation for her cultivation. Although she was very surprised that Bailey Hongzhuang could persist on the deck. According to the situation she learned, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation shouldn't be very high. In any case, with this cultivation, let alone dealing with Jun Lingxuan and the other two, it wouldn't be easy to deal with one person. It's not that exaggerated. I was also in danger before. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It was the first time she saw Lin Qianqian like this, and it was very interesting. Now I feel that you are Yi's biological sister. It turns out that your personalities are similar. When Yang Ming saw Lin Qianqian before, she had always been calm, which was in sharp contrast to Lin Yi's character. At that time, she had thought that the two sisters' personalities were poles apart, but now that she saw Lin Qianqian's current appearance, she felt that they were indeed sisters. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lin Qianqian blushed and looked a little embarrassed. She then turned to Mo Yunjue and said, Yunjue, I didn't expect that even you would fall. When we arrived, Jun Zitao was indeed heavily injured and had no strength to fight back. If it wasn't for Jun Lingxuan using some underhanded tricks, Hong Zhuang would have finished him off. Mo Yunjue looked indifferent. His cold face was like ice without any temperature. His voice was calm as he stated a fact. Seeing this, Lin Xianxian and the other two couldn't help but look at each other. They gradually began to accept this reality in their hearts. I'm afraid all this is not a joke. It's all true. Hong Zhuang, I didn't expect your combat power to be so strong. I really underestimated you before. Lin Taxing stared at Bailey Hong Zhuang. His handsome face was full of exclamation and surprise. He then turned to Yi Beichun and said, Beichun, you are really lucky to marry a good wife. Di Xiaofeng chuckled. Taxing, then you have to follow this standard to find a wife in the future. Chapter 4892. Everyone was completely helpless. After their understanding, they realized that Di Beichun was really a wife-flaunting maniac. Pervert. Di Xiaofeng rolled his eyes and spat out 2 words. Di Beichun looked indifferent. After all, these people were still unmarried, so it was normal for them to be jealous of him. Just as Di Beichun and the others were talking, a voice suddenly sounded behind them. Di Beichun, did you guys meet my big sister? Xiao Sudong's eyes fell on Di Beichun's body. As early as when he saw a group of people sneaking around and talking, he felt that something was wrong. When he got closer, he heard the words about the Xiao family. He immediately connected all the dots in his mind. Xiao Sudong, we're not very familiar with you, so why should we tell you? Lin Xianxian's face was full of disgust. Even if they had a good relationship with Xiao Sudong before, now that both sides had completely fallen out, their previous friendship was naturally gone. What's more, during the alchemy competition, Xiao Sudong's attitude towards them was not polite at all. I'm asking Di Beichun. Xiao Sudong glanced coldly. I clearly heard you guys mention the Xiao family just now. Do you still want to deny it now? I'm saying that I felt unlucky to meet you guys on the way. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Lin Xianxian was not polite at all. She directly stepped forward, forcing Xiao Sudong to step back. After taking another step back, Xiao Sudong steadied his body and looked at Lin Xianxian with dissatisfaction. I see that you feel unlucky. Then why did you run over here? Everyone here is our people, and they feel that you're an eyesore. Are you here to be beaten? The continuous questioning made Xiao Sudong speechless for a moment. As a man, he really couldn't win against this woman. After seeing Xiao Sudong's situation, the cultivators of the Jun family also came over. Young Master Xiao, what happened? The Jun family's disciples' eyes fell on Di Beichun and the others, with a hint of warning. Xiao Sudong was originally lacking in confidence, but after seeing the disciples of the Jun family, his confidence suddenly increased a lot. In fact, he was also quite depressed. There were many cultivators gathered in front of this building, but he was the only disciple of the Xiao clan. On the contrary, Di Beichun and the others had a total of 6 people. If they really fought, they wouldn't be a match for him. Fortunately, there were 3 cultivators from the Jun family. Although they were still less than the number of cultivators from the Di family, at least they had the ability to deal with the situation. I heard them mention my eldest sister and young Master Jun's names, and I wanted to ask them if they had met them. Xiao Sudong also had some doubts in his heart. Logically speaking, if his elder sister and Di Beichun and the others met, they would inevitably fight. Based on this situation, the winner should be Big Sister and the others. But if that was the case, Di Beichun and the others would not have come here unscathed. Hearing this, the eyes of the Jun family's disciples lit up. Their leader was Jun Lingxuan. They had not been able to find Jun Lingxuan, and they felt a little uneasy. Although most of the cultivators were still scattered, it was obvious that many people had gathered here. Chapter 4893. Is this true? The gazes of the Jun family's disciples fell on Di Beichun and the others, revealing unfriendliness and suspicion. In my opinion, it should be fake, right? Jun Qianbin said slowly. If they really met, Ling Sun would have already dealt with them. Why would he let them appear here? Jun Qianbin's face was full of disdain. When he first heard the news, he was also a little surprised, but after thinking about it carefully, it was probably impossible. As Jun Chenbin's voice fell, Xiao Sudong also nodded. Actually, I think the same as you. It's definitely impossible for them to meet. As he spoke, Xiao Sudong no longer had his previous persistence. He only felt that perhaps it was because he wanted to know the whereabouts of his elder sister so much that he didn't even consider the most basic thing clearly. If they didn't meet, then just say that they didn't meet. Why do you have to pretend to be so mysterious? Xiao Sudong looked at Lin Qianqian with disdain and mocked. Xiao Sudong, don't be so proud. Lin Qianqian rolled her eyes. To tell you the truth, Bei Qin and the others not only met Xiao Sou, but also met Jun Lingxuan and Jun Shitao. Xiao Sudong and the others who were about to leave stopped after hearing Lin Qianqian's words and turned to stare at her. However, the result is not what you think. Lin Qianqian spread out her hands and shrugged. The ones who fled were not Bei Chun and the others, but Xiao Sou and the others. What kind of joke are you making? Xiao Sudong snorted coldly, his face full of sarcasm. If you made it up, I might believe it. Now you're saying that my elder sister and young Master Jun are no match for Di Beichen and the others? Haha, don't make a fool of yourself with such lies. Jun Chenbing also laughed. When Ling Sun appears later, your lies will be exposed. Wouldn't it be even more embarrassing? Looking at the expressions of Xiao Sudong and the others, Di Xiaofeng's face also darkened. At this time, Di Beichen's magnetic and flat voice sounded, I didn't expect that Xiao Sou would have such a treasure like the escape talisman. I really underestimated you. Xiao Sudong, who had been laughing extremely exaggeratedly, suddenly froze after hearing this. How did you know? The escape talisman was given to Xiao Sou by his father before they entered the immortal cloud mystic realm. The only people who knew about this were Xiao Sou and him. Other than them, no one else knew. Even the other disciples of the Xiao clan did not know about this matter. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Di Beichen to know. Could it be that what Di Beichen said was true? Xiao Sou crushed the escape talisman and left. Bailey Hongzhuang said calmly. Xiao Sudong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, his mind full of thoughts. Before mentioning the escape talisman, he did not believe it at all. But now he had no choice but to believe it. He must have encountered it before. Because I think it must be the three of you who attacked my elder sister. That's why such a situation happened. Xiao Sudong's face turned ashen. I didn't expect you to be so despicable, bullying her with numbers. Chapter 4894. My big sister isn't here right now, so you can say whatever you want. When my big sister appears, I'll see if you can continue to lie. Xiao Sudong's face was full of disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't think that you're so great after being in the limelight in the alchemy competition. Don't you feel embarrassed to blow your own trumpet like this? That's right, Miss Xiao and our Jun Lingxuan. Don't tell me our strength can't be compared to you people from the lower realm. It's simply a fantasy story. Jun Chenbin's face was full of disdain. He felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were too funny. Even if it was to show off their own ability, they shouldn't have made up such a flawed lie. I'm blowing my own trumpet. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. It's up to you to believe it or not, but you should recognize this thing, right? As her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly took out a storage ring. What storage ring? Xiao Sudong frowned. I've never seen it before. However, when Jun Chenbin saw the storage ring, his face suddenly changed, and a deep shock appeared in his eyes. They were no stranger to this storage ring. This was clearly Jun Zitao's storage ring. Although storage rings looked similar, they grew up with Jun Zitao since they were young, so they were very familiar with his storage ring. How can Zitao's storage ring be with you? Jun Chenbin's face was full of horror. He knew very well that a cultivator storage ring couldn't appear in other places. Once it appeared in other places, there was only one possibility. He was dead. Jun Zitao was dead? When this thought appeared in the minds of the Jun family's disciples, they all felt that it was simply impossible. In any case, Jun Zitao couldn't be dead. What's more, they encountered Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Could it be that the combined strength of the three of them was stronger than Jun Lingxuan and the other two? After hearing this, Xiao Sudong couldn't help but be stunned. What did you say? This is Zitao's storage ring? Why are you here? Don't you already know? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and asked. Impossible, Jun Chanbin said firmly. This is absolutely impossible. Believe it or not. Di Beichun looked coldly at Jun Chanbin. We don't have time to deal with you. Do as you please. With that, Di Beichun pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to the other side. It's useless to talk to them. In any case, they have already decided in their hearts. In the end, when Jun Lingxuan and the others appeared, these guys naturally knew. Di Xiaofeng and the others also followed after seeing Di Beichun's actions. However, Jun Chanbin and the others did not give up and followed closely behind. Di Beichun, explain yourself. Di Beichun looked at the angry Jun Chanbin in front of him, and a trace of coldness appeared on his beautiful face. Do you want to fight? If you want to fight, we'll accompany you to the end. Her calm words didn't contain any emotions, but when they fell into the ears of Jun Chanbin and the others, they were filled with killing intent. Obviously, if they dared to continue questioning, Di Beichun wouldn't mind killing them personally. Seeing this, Xiao Sudong couldn't help but say, Jun Chanbin, why don't we go back first? Maybe after a while, elder sister and the others will appear. Chapter 4895. After Xiao Sudong and the others left, Di Xiaofeng could not help but sigh. These guys really won't shed tears until they see the coffin. They'll understand sooner or later. If it weren't for the fact that there are too many cultivators gathered here, I would have taken care of them directly. Lin Taxing's eyes were filled with disgust. He really did not have a good impression of these guys. Di Beichun nodded slightly. He also noticed that there were many cultivators gathered around. While they were arguing, the surrounding gazes were all fixed on them. Presumably, everyone was itching for them to fight so that they could reap the benefits of the third party. By the way, Big Brother, why are so many of you gathered here? Di Beichun's deep and charming eyes revealed a contemplative light. For this point, Di Beichun had always been somewhat unable to understand. Logically speaking, it was impossible for all the cultivators who entered the Immortal Cloud secret realm to gather in the same place since they could not tell the direction. However, when they arrived, there were dozens of cultivators gathered here. It was simply unbelievable. We were also attracted by the light that appeared in the ruins. Di Xiaofeng slowly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally understood that the ruins would flash with a dazzling white light every 4 hours, attracting all the surrounding cultivators. Di Beichun and the others had come here because they had seen this dazzling light. When I first arrived, there weren't so many cultivators. However, this building has attracted more and more people recently. Emperor Xiaofeng revealed a helpless expression. I was hoping to enter this building to find some treasures while no one else knew about it. I didn't expect that even though more and more people have come, I still haven't found a way to enter. Can't find a way to enter? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Is it because the door can't be opened? That's right. Lin Qianqian nodded. This building is really too strange. Although there's a door, I can't find a mechanism no matter how hard I search. Look, there are many people fumbling around over there. However, we've searched the entire area and couldn't find any mechanism at all. Not only that, we tried to break through the door, but no matter how we attacked, it was useless. The defensive power of this door is too strong. It's not something we can break through with our strength. Lin Taxing sighed helplessly. After being in the Immortal Cloud mystic realm for so long, he had not gained anything. His only hope lay in this building. Who would have thought that he would not be able to enter it? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at the entrance of the building. As expected, many cultivators were looking around, trying to find a way in. Di Beichun and Mo Yunjua couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Their minds were filled with thoughts of that rock. Perhaps that rock was the way to enter. Sensing their gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head quietly. I keep feeling that this place is a little strange. It seems to be different from what I thought before. Although she had come here based on the stone's reaction, after seeing this building, she had a strange feeling in her heart. Chapter 4896. What's the difference? Di Beichen wrinkled his beautiful eyebrows and asked. For Bailey Hongzhuang's intuition, he had always believed in it. Since Hongzhuang had such an idea, there must be something else going on behind the scenes. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I don't know what the problem is, but give me some time and I'll figure it out. What's going on? Listening to the conversation between Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, a trace of doubt appeared in Lin Qianqian's eyes. All right, Beichen, didn't you see the light coming from the building? Did you come here by coincidence? No. Di Beichen shook his head and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang before continuing. Actually, Hongzhuang found a stone when she was in the lower realm. We followed the stone's reaction and came here. The stone was a secret to them, but Di Xiaofeng and the other two were trustworthy people, so he didn't plan to hide it. After all, they were a team after entering the Immortal Cloud secret realm. Stone? Di Xiaofeng was stunned. A stone from the lower realm? Lin Qianqian was also shocked. A stone from the lower realm is related to the building in the Immortal Cloud secret realm? Hongzhuang, you're too lucky, aren't you? Normally, although there would be things in the upper realm that would fall to the lower realm, the chances were not high. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to find something in the upper realm that resonated with the stone. The chances were not small at all. Actually, I didn't expect it to be like this. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. But this is still a clue. Maybe we can find something. Of course, Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. Since it can be used to sense something, it must be useful. You guys rest here for a while. We'll check the area around the door and see if we can find a way to enter, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Since they were already here, she naturally had to check it out. She naturally wanted to know the secret of the stone. Moreover, she always felt that the stone was fated with her. You guys go ahead. Di Xiaofeng nodded. Although there are many cultivators here, there are also many forces. Normally, there won't be any danger. Hearing this, Di Beichen and the other two didn't say anything else and turned and walked towards the front of the building. As they gradually approached the white, holy building, the power of light shone on the three. It was warm and made them feel comfortable. The power of light really gives me a comfortable feeling. Di Beichen smiled lightly. No matter when, the light was always what everyone yearned for. Maybe this building is the inheritance of a light attribute cultivator. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows, subconsciously looking at Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, they felt the legacy in Bailey Hongzhuang was the most. If the legacy? After walking to the front of the door, many cultivators around them looked at the three of them. However, their gazes only lingered for a short while before they looked away and continued to examine the door in front of them. This building is really strange. After attracting everyone here, we can't find the entrance at all. I've already looked at every corner of the door. There's nothing special at all. Chapter 4897. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two approached, they began to look around for the mechanism to enter. Although the other cultivators had already searched all around the ruins these days, they still paid careful attention to everything. There might be something they missed. After Jun Chunbin and Xiao Sudong left the location of Di Beichen and the others, they returned to the territory they occupied before. Jun Chunbin, are you sure you didn't see wrong? That storage ring really belongs to Jun Shitao? Xiao Sudong still couldn't believe it. After all, Jun Shitao was the second young master of the Jun family, and his strength was also extremely outstanding. He couldn't believe that Jun Shitao would die at the hands of Di Beichen and the others. Jun Shinbin and the other two Jun family disciples' faces were extremely ugly, and for a moment, they were also somewhat uneasy. I remember very clearly that the storage ring belongs to Shitao. Jun Shinbin's face was gloomy. If Shitao really died at their hands, then we must avenge him. After getting an affirmative answer, Xiao Sudong's eyes flashed slightly. This result was really a bit shocking. Even if that's the case, they must have used despicable means to sneak attack Shitao. Otherwise, it's absolutely impossible. Jun Shinbin's eyes were filled with haze. When he looked at Di Beichen and the others, the hatred on his face was even more undisguised. That's for sure. Xiao Sudong nodded. In my opinion, Jun Shitao must have been unlucky and was ambushed by the three of them. As for the other things, they must have made up a lie to scare us and make us panic. We can't fall into their trap. That's right. Jun Chanbin agreed, and then asked doubtfully, "Then what's the matter with this escape talisman?" Xiao Sudong's expression was a bit complicated. Maybe they learned about it from other channels. Anyway, I don't believe what they said. We'll know when Xiao Sou and Ling Sun appear. I believe they should be attracted by this light soon. The Jun family disciple said. On the other side, after the three of them carefully examined the door of the building, they found that it was just as everyone said. They couldn't find any mechanism. I'm afraid there really isn't any mechanism here. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, "If there's a trap, there are so many people here. Someone will accidentally touch it." Deep Beichin nodded slightly, and his gaze fell on the keyhole in front of the main door. "Wife, could the stone in your hand be the key?" There was only one keyhole in the entire door, but it was obvious that no one had the key. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the keyhole and compared it with the stone in her hand. In the end, she shook her head. Although this keyhole is similar to the stone, it is not the same. The stone should not be the key. Hearing this, Di Beichin and Mo Yunjue were also puzzled. They were attracted by the stone, but they didn't expect that the stone wasn't the key. Don't worry, as long as the door is opened, we will definitely find the secret of this stone, Mo Yunjue said slowly. The three of them didn't give up and looked around the entire building before choosing to give up. When Di Xiaofeng and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang coming back, they couldn't help but ask, "Do you have any clues?" Chapter 4898. I knew it. Di Xiaofeng revealed a look of understanding. When I first came here, I had been studying this point. However, after studying for 3 whole days, I still didn't gain anything, so I gave up. Hongzhuang, did your stone have any effect as well? Lin Qianqian asked. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and shook her head. It is not the key to opening this building. Hearing this, Lin Qianqian's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. I see. It seems that there is no other way now. Lin Taxing sighed. In my opinion, we can only wait here now. Speaking of which, this place is really strange. Recently, it has been attracting more and more cultivators. Could it be that it wants to attract all the cultivators around here? Di Xiaofeng revealed a puzzled expression. He had never understood the purpose of this building. At least, many cultivators who want to take the treasure for themselves will not be able to succeed. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. What if this building never opens? Lin Qianqian frowned. She was not worried about anything else, but this was what she was most worried about. If this building never opened, wouldn't they be wasting time here? Hearing this, everyone could not help but fall into silence. Regarding this point, everyone really could not judge the result. It shouldn't be. Di Beichin's handsome face was full of contemplation. I think this building will definitely open. Let's wait here patiently for a while. Everyone nodded. After all, if they were to leave like this, no one would be willing to. What's wrong with Xiaohe and Xiaobai? Di Xiaofeng found that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have Xiaohe, who was usually chattering, beside her. After searching for a while, he found Xiaohe and Xiaobai sleeping on the White Lion's back. White Lion's fur was very long. In addition, he was deliberately wrapping Xiaohe and Xiaobai. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to tell. Bailey Hongzhuang looked a little sad. When we were fighting with Jun Lingxuan and the others, after she explained everything, Di Xiaofeng and the others finally understood what was going on. I didn't expect Jun Lingxuan and the others to go so far. Lin Qianqian looked angry. Although I didn't have a good impression of Xiao Sou in the past, I didn't hate her either. I didn't expect things to turn out this way. Birds of a feather flock together. How are Xiaohe and Xiaobai doing now? Di Xiaofeng's gaze was a little heavy. He knew how Di Beichan felt about Xiaohe and Xiaobai. If something happened to Xiaohe and Xiaobai, then, fortunately, Xiaohe and Xiaobai's lives are not in danger. However, they're now in a deep slumber, and we don't know when they will wake up. It's good as long as they are fine. Lin Taxing said and sighed his heart. Most people would not be able to save themselves from self-destruction. He really did not know how these two contracted beasts did it. After discovering that they could not find a way to enter the building, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others no longer focused. Instead, they began to cultivate in peace and patiently waited for the door to open. During this cultivation process, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the speed of cultivating the light energy was much faster than usual. She was pleasantly surprised. Chapter 4899. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. In these 7 days, more and more cultivators gathered nearby. Almost every day, more and more cultivators would gather here. In just 7 days, the number of cultivators gathered here had doubled compared to when they originally wanted to arrive. More than 200 cultivators had gathered here. There were still many cultivators who did not give up and continued to search for a way to enter. However, even more cultivators chose to give up. If we continue to stay here, we might end up wasting our time here. That's right. We've been here for half a month, and this building hasn't reacted at all. Perhaps the purpose of this building is to attract our attention. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm unwilling, I would have already left. As everyone waited longer and longer, the voices of dissatisfaction also increased. Many cultivators felt that this building was actually a waste of everyone's time. However, even though there were many complaints, no one chose to leave in the end. This was because no one knew if the building would open up after they left. Such a holy and glorious building. It was obvious that there were many treasures inside. Perhaps their harvest from searching in the immortal cloud's secret realm for an entire year couldn't even compare to the harvest from this building. These few days, more and more people have gathered here. I feel that if we continue to wait here, perhaps all the cultivators will be here by themselves. Di Xiaofeng sighed. He really felt helpless about this situation. Now that so many cultivators have gathered here, I still haven't received any news about Ling Xiao. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. In these 7 days, many cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family had gathered. Their group could be considered very large. At the very least, if they stayed here, no other group would dare to covet them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the others' eyes were filled with worry. Ling Xiao should be fine. Currently, we haven't heard any news about him from other cultivators. This should be good news, Di Beichun said slowly. In the process of waiting, a few cultivators from the AO family appeared around them. Fortunately, they didn't get any news about AO Ling Xiao from these cultivators. Based on the current situation, no news was good news. AO Junkwang hasn't appeared yet. This is really strange. Lin Taxing raised his eyebrows, looking a little puzzled. Now the leaders of each force have basically appeared, but Jun Lingxuan, Xiao Sou, and AO Junkwang have not appeared. In my opinion, I'm afraid that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou won't be able to appear. The level of that escape talisman is not low. It must have teleported them to a place far away. Even if they wanted to rush over, it would not be a matter of time. I plan to wait for 2 more days. If I still don't get anything, I'll leave. Di Xiaofeng muttered. It wasn't a good idea to continue staying here. Even if the building would open up after he left, he would just accept it and take it as his bad luck. Seeing Emperor Xiaofeng make this decision so quickly, everyone was a little surprised, but thinking about it carefully, this was not a bad decision. Chapter 4900. Following the appearance of this ray of light, everyone's gaze changed and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Is the door about to open? Such a rich light. I feel as if my entire body has been cleansed and bathed in the power of the light. Haha, luckily I haven't left yet. Otherwise, I would have missed such a good opportunity. For a moment, all the cultivators present revealed joyful smiles, and all their previous complaints disappeared into nothingness at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze focused on the building that was blooming with supreme brilliance. Then, she noticed that the door that had been tightly shut was finally showing signs of opening. Seeing this, Di Beichen and the others' eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. Almost all the cultivators approached the door at the first moment. Everyone knew that the sooner they entered, the greater their harvest. Let's go in quickly. Daehaoen's eyes were filled with joy, but his voice was tinged with anxiety. At this moment, the slightest hesitation could cause them to miss a good opportunity. Everyone nodded and immediately quickened their pace as they approached the door. Rumble. The door opened on its own and made a dull sound. Everyone rushed into the ruins like a swarm of bees. Their speed was pushed to the limit as they were afraid of being left behind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not slow either as they quickly entered. As soon as they entered, everyone realized that the building was extremely large and there were 2 forks in the road. There were more than 30 cultivators from the D family and the Lin family in total. After seeing this situation, everyone chose to split up without hesitation. Let's split up here. Those who are familiar with each other should form a team and take care of each other. Di Xiaofeng quickly said, "Safety first. Don't lose your life for the treasure. Everyone, remember this clearly." Lin Taxing also said, "Let's go." Everything happened in the blink of an eye. No one was willing to waste any time while fighting for the treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun, and Mo Yunjue naturally walked towards one of the passages. Di Xiaofeng originally planned to lead the other members of the D family, but thinking that Daehaoen was there, he chose Di Beichun and the other 2. After all, before they left, her family had repeatedly reminded her to take good care of Beichun and Hongzhuang. The speed of the 4 of them was not slow. Although they were not the first to enter, their speed still surpassed most of the cultivators. This building was no different from the layout of the ruins that Bailey Hongzhuang had seen before. There were still rooms here. The only difference was that this place was dazzling with gold and jade, and it was as bright as day inside. Everywhere was filled with holy radiance. Walking here, everyone's hearts seemed to have been cleansed, and they were filled with awe and respect. When everyone passed by the first room, they found that many cultivators had already gathered inside. At this moment, a fight had already broken out for the treasure. The sound of fighting mixed with the sound of wind breaking could be heard incessantly. The other cultivators had even blocked the door, making it impossible to see what was inside. Seeing this scene, the 4 of them continued to move forward without hesitation. They did not want to waste any time here. This was because they all knew that the deeper they went in the ruins, the higher the value of the treasure. Chapter 4901. Of course, there were many cultivators who had the same idea as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Everyone rushed forward without hesitation. Regardless of whether it was the top cultivators cultivated by the major families or the major forces, the difference in strength was not very big. If anyone could obtain an excellent treasure or inheritance, they could completely crush the other cultivators. Therefore, this kind of opportunity was everyone's dream. Every time this happens, I feel that I shouldn't have put all my energy into cultivating my movement technique, Di Xiaofeng lamented as he flew forward. The competition in the upper realm is indeed fierce, and Mo Yunjue said quietly. His cold voice still did not have any warmth. Finally, the 4 of them arrived at a room. When they opened the door and saw what was inside, even with their experience, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "Oh my God!" Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with shock. "Am I seeing things?" Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2, as well as Bai Shi and Xiao Xuanzi, stared at the scene in a daze. Bodhi fruit, thousand silk leaf, colored glazed water. These are all rare treasures, and they're all piled up here. How terrifying is the heritage of the owner of this ruin? Di Xiaofeng did not know how to express his feelings at this moment. He always knew that the owner of this ruin must have accumulated a lot of treasures throughout his life, but the treasures in front of him were too terrifying. This had gone beyond the scope of heroism. This was a treasure trove. If such treasures appeared in a ruin, he would already be shocked. However, this was only a room in this ruin, and there were so many things. Then, how many treasures would there be in this ruin? Don't think about it. Quickly put these treasures away. Di Beichun reminded everyone, then said, "Xiao Xuanzi, guard outside the room. Alert us if anyone comes near." Understood. Xiao Xuanzi quickly nodded and acted as a sentinel. In the past, this kind of task was usually given to Xiao He and Xiao Bai. However, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had fallen into a deep sleep, so this task naturally fell on Xiao He's shoulders. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't delay any longer. They immediately put away the treasures as fast as they could. At the same time, every room in the ruins was filled with a dazzling array of treasures, causing every cultivator who entered to be pleasantly surprised. "Master, someone's coming." Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three kept the treasures into their Qingquan bags, Xiao Xuanzi's voice rang out. Then, Jun Chanbin and the others appeared before everyone's eyes. "It's really a small world," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, her eyes falling on Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sudong. The other party obviously didn't expect Di Beiqin and the others to be here. A trace of awkwardness flashed across their faces. Although their eyes were filled with desire, they didn't plan to make a move. After all, whether it was Di Xiaofeng or Di Beichun, their strength couldn't be underestimated. Without enough confidence, they couldn't make a move rashly. Most importantly, wasting time here was undoubtedly the most uneconomical thing to do. "Let's go." Xiao Sudong glanced coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, then immediately turned and left. In response, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others ignored him and walked out of the room. Chapter 4902. As they advanced, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the scope of the ruins was not ordinary, and the number of treasures inside was even more shocking. Later on, there were very few conflicts between cultivators because there were other unexplored rooms waiting for them. This is the first time in my life that I've seen a ruin with so many treasures. If I didn't experience it myself, even if someone told me, I wouldn't believe it. Di Xiaofeng's dark and bright eyes were filled with indescribable astonishment. Even if all of this really happened in front of him, he still couldn't believe it and only felt that it was a dream. Indeed, the number of treasures here is a bit too shocking. Di Beichen's deep eyes flickered with contemplation. It seems like someone piled all the treasures here, but didn't set up any obstacles at all. This is completely different from what we encountered before. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I don't know why, but although the journey has been very smooth, I vaguely feel that something isn't right." From the lower realm to the upper realm, she had seen a few ruins. The treasures in the lower realm naturally couldn't be compared to the upper realm, but the owner of the ruins should have the same idea. Only cultivators who were recognized could receive his inheritance, but this wasn't reflected at all in this ruin. It seemed like someone had piled up a treasure trove and was just waiting for everyone to share the spoils. Perhaps it was because it was too easy to get, so it felt strange. "I also feel that it's a bit strange," Deep Bachin frowned, "but I can't figure out what the problem is. Could it be that we're thinking too much?" Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but say, "The owner of this ruin is of the light attribute. Maybe his personality is just that generous." Hearing this, the four of them looked at each other. Although they also felt that this reason was ridiculous, they couldn't think of any other reason other than this. "Hongzhuang, after we entered the ruin, did the stone react?" Mo Yunju asked. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "No. Originally, the stone had some reaction when they were outside, but after entering the ruin, the stone no longer had any reaction." Regarding this, she also felt that it was very strange. However, this also made her understand that the stone really had nothing to do with this ruin. As for why it attracted her before, she also didn't understand. Perhaps after leaving the ruin, she would have a chance to figure it out. In this ruin, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others obtained some treasures. During this journey, all the cultivators that they met had smiles on their faces, and they couldn't control the joy in their hearts. With these treasures, they would be able to improve their cultivation and surpass other cultivators. How could they not be happy? Finally, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the main hall. When they arrived, they found where many cultivators were gathered. At this moment, the door of the main hall was closed, and the two paths finally converged at the same place. Xiaofeng's, Di Xiaofeng, Di Beichun, Di Xiaofeng's, and Di Xiaofeng Shaf. Di Xiaofeng nodded. "The treasures in this ruin are truly shocking. Just by looking at your expression, I can tell that you've had a great harvest." Chapter 4903. Hearing Lin Qianqian's words, even the cultivators beside Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but nod in agreement. All the waiting was worth it. Just these rewards alone would allow me to leave the Immortal Cloud's secret realm without any regrets. Di Xiaofeng's handsome face was filled with a warm smile. Even if he told his family about this, they would not believe him. Haha, that's right. Lin Taxing was also in a good mood. The main hall is so big. Maybe there are precious treasures inside. When we leave later, let's not split up. Once we leave the relic, the battle will begin. Di Beichun reminded everyone. Now, everyone's hearts were filled with joy and they had neglected other things. Hearing this, everyone immediately understood Di Beichun's meaning and nodded in agreement. In the relic, everyone was busy looking for gains and naturally did not have the opportunity to covet other people's treasures. However, once they left the relic, the situation would be different. Everyone had a lot of precious treasures. If there were few people or they were alone, they would likely become the target of others. Fortunately, there were many cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family who had entered the relic. Ordinary people would not dare to target them. Xiaofeng, you're here. A familiar voice rang out. Then, everyone saw Murong Jing appear. Murong, you're here too. Di Xiaofeng was overjoyed. Why didn't I see you before? I was lucky. I just arrived when the relic opened. Ha! Murong Jing could not hide the joy in his voice and laughed cheerfully. I see. You're really lucky. Di Xiaofeng nodded with a smile. Let's have a good gathering later. Murong Jing nodded and looked at the closed door of the main hall. Now, everyone was most concerned about the main hall. However, as everyone tried to break the door of the main hall, it did not work. It's the same as the door. There are no mechanisms, and we can't open it. A cultivator's voice rang out, full of helplessness and disappointment. Why don't we try to attack the door together and blast it open? Nangong Yuqing's voice resounded, rallying everyone. Nangong Yuqing was the most outstanding cultivator of the Nangong family. His strength was outstanding, so his appeal was naturally strong. Hearing his call, the group of cultivators nodded one after another. After all, everyone wanted to know what kind of treasure was in the main hall. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't pay any attention to it. They were Nangong Yuqing's opponents, so why would they respond to his call? That was naturally impossible. Naturally, Nangong Yuqing also noticed Di Beichun. In fact, with Di Beichun's outstanding appearance and temperament, no matter how many people were around, it was still difficult to ignore his existence. Di Beichun, are you not going to make a move? Nangong Yuqing glanced over. If you don't do anything, then the treasures in the main hall will have nothing to do with you. As soon as he said that, everyone's eyes fell on Di Beichun. Chapter 4904. Nangong Yuqing, according to what you're saying, as long as no one makes a move, they won't get a share of the treasures in the main hall. Di Beichun sneered. Who do you think you are? Why should you be the one to make the rules? What's more, there are so many cultivators here. I'm afraid it's impossible for all of us to make a move together, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Although the main hall wasn't small, it was impossible for all the cultivators to make a move together. Most importantly, they were inside the ruins. If they made a move together, no one would be able to bear the consequences. Originally, the crowd didn't pay much attention to Nangong Yuqing's words, but after hearing Di Beichun's words, they all frowned. That's right. Making a move isn't a big deal. Isn't it too complicated? Some of the cultivators standing far away from the main hall expressed their dissatisfaction. Nangong Yuqing, why don't you make a move? We'll make a move instead. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile. Nangong Yuqing, who originally wanted to cause trouble for Di Beichun, saw that the situation was completely different from what he had expected. His expression became gloomy. You're the young master of the Di family. It's normal for you to make a move. I won't make a move. What can you do about it? Di Beichun's lips curved into an evil smile. His calm appearance revealed an evil and domineering aura. His handsome face became even more charming. Just one look from him was enough to captivate a person's soul. Looking at Di Beichun like this, all the women present had an infatuated look in their eyes. Such a handsome man was truly fascinating. You. Nangong Yuqing's face was filled with anger, but facing Di Baichun, he really couldn't do anything. After all, Di Baichun's identity, status, and family background weren't inferior to his. Most importantly, there were many cultivators from the Di family and Lin family here. Once a conflict broke out, the result would be uncertain. Di Baichun just looked at Nangong Yuqing. This guy seemed to have forgotten what happened last time and was looking for trouble again. After seeing this scene, the cultivators from the Nangong family quietly reminded Nangong Yuqing that there was no benefit in making a move against Di Baichun. Nangong Yuqing coldly snorted and gave Di Baichun a fierce look before ignoring him. Once he left the ruins, he would find a way to teach Di Baichun a lesson. Boom! Everyone's attack was aimed at the main hall's door. Is the door. Seeing this, another group of cultivators joined in the attack, but the door still did not respond. And we. Too. In my opinion, this situation is quite possible. Everyone began to ponder. They really couldn't see through this ruin. Just as everyone was talking and guessing how to enter the main hall, a sound suddenly came from the main hall's door. Hearing this, everyone's eyes turned to the main hall. Their eyes were burning with anticipation. Creak. Chapter 4905. Within their line of sight, the Great Hall was filled with a shocking number of treasures. It was a dazzling array of treasures that blinded their eyes. If I'm not mistaken, that should be the blood essence of a dragon, right? Heavens, that's the phoenix blood fruit. Isn't that the long-lost Book of Chaos? Cries of surprise rang out. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion. Such a treasure had completely exceeded their expectations. Almost immediately, everyone wanted to charge into the Great Hall. However, they were all blocked by an invisible barrier. However, it was because of this barrier that everyone had time to see the treasures in the Great Hall. The blood essence of a dragon. It said that after using it to refine one's body, one's physical body would become extremely powerful. Its defensive power would be comparable to a demonic beast's. There are very few dragons in the Dragon Clan. Their blood essence is even more precious. It's almost impossible to obtain it on a normal day. The phoenix blood fruit is a fruit that grows near the phoenix. After consuming it, one's cultivation will increase tremendously. Furthermore, one's strength may even contain a trace of the phoenix's power. I've only heard of such a treasure. I've never thought that I would actually see it. The Book of Chaos. I've heard that it's an extremely high-level treasure. It's already beyond the scope of our knowledge. The Book of Chaos contains the laws of heaven and earth. As long as one can comprehend the Book of Chaos, one's power will increase rapidly. One can even break through the bottleneck and master the power of the laws. Although there's only one page in the Book of Chaos, it's already an unparalleled treasure. How could so many long-lost treasures be gathered here? This is simply too terrifying. Our luck is just too good. We've actually found so many treasures. In an instant, all the cultivators' hearts were captivated by the treasures before them. With these treasures, they would be able to surpass the majority of cultivators. As long as they obtain these treasures, they would become a new force to be reckoned with when they leave the Divine Cloud Secret Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were stunned when they saw this scene. The shock on their faces was not much better than the other cultivators. The number of treasures here is simply too shocking. I'm really curious as to who the owner of this ruin is to have so many treasures in his possession. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with shock. The treasures that he had previously obtained had already filled him with shock. Now, everything that he saw gave him a sense of disbelief. This is simply too shocking. I'm of the major family's knowledge of this ruin's existence. Lin Taxing could not help but sigh. If the major clans knew about the existence of this relic, it was likely that they would not have a chance to train in the Immortal Cloud Secret Realm. Speaking of which, this Immortal Cloud Secret Realm has been opened many times already. But this time, we actually encountered it. Our luck is really not bad. Lin Qianqian's face lit up. One's fortune was also related to one's luck. The fact that they were able to come here and obtain these rewards already proved that they were very lucky. The disciples of the Di clan and the Lin clan were equally delighted and eager to give it a try. Of the of the world, 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 of the divine, of the world, of the world, of the world, of the treasures. Of the God art. Of the major of the world. Chapter 4906. Master, the treasures here are just too amazing. White Lion's eyes lit up with excitement. He had actually found treasures that could increase the power of his bloodline in this place. Such treasures were something that he could only come across by chance. He had never expected to find one here. This was a treasure trove. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Looking at the treasures in front of her, she did not know how to express her feelings. The things here were simply too rich and shocking, giving her a feeling of disbelief. Beichun, I don't know why, but after coming here, my intuition has become stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichun. Even though she was drooling over these treasures, there were simply too many of them. So many that she felt that they were all fake. Hongzhuang, you're thinking too much. These are all real. Lin Qianqian smiled when she heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Di Beichun's eyes darkened. My wife, do you suspect that this is an illusion? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Her deep eyes rippled with a thoughtful light. That might be the case. Don't you think that the treasures here are simply too unbelievable? There are indeed too many of them. Di Beichun replied in a low voice. However, based on the current situation, I feel that these treasures are all real. The treasures that we've just obtained are real. This is what I've never understood. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. She had never understood this point, but the feeling in her heart was very obvious. She could vaguely sense that something was amiss. However, she could not pinpoint the source of the problem. Bailey Hongzhuang remained silent as she thought of this. Before she could figure out the source of the problem, her words would not be convincing. My wife, let's take a look first. Di Beichun did not doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. They should observe carefully before making a decision. Yes, under the expectant gazes of the crowd, the restriction grew fainter and fainter. Obviously, it wouldn't be long before the restriction completely dissipated. As the restriction grew fainter and fainter, the covetous look in everyone's eyes grew even more intense. All of their attention was focused on the treasure. In their minds, they had already begun to imagine the days after they obtained the treasures. At that time, they would definitely show off their might. It's fading, it's fading. The restriction is about to open. Get ready. Everyone was accumulating power, ready to fight for the treasures. Crack. As the restriction completely dissipated, all the cultivators rushed in at once. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not slow either. They rushed into the hall one after another. However, after entering the main hall, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that there was an invisible force affecting her. At the same time, a cold energy came from the stone, and her mind, which was gradually becoming crazy, was restored to its sobriety. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with horror. She finally understood where the problem was, that she had always felt something was amiss. So it was here. Di Beichun had already snatched the Book of Chaos. His deep and enchanting eyes were filled with passion, and he could not hide the excitement on his face. So this is the Book of Chaos. Chapter 4907. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't figure out what the problem was. Looking at the treasure in front of her, she held it in her hand. Immediately after, she found that there was an uncontrollable excitement spreading from her mind. She couldn't contain this excitement at all. She kept thinking that as long as she could get this treasure, she would definitely have greater achievements in the future. It was because of this thought that a trace of madness flashed in her eyes. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang fell into madness, the power from the stone restored a trace of clarity in her eyes. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately put the stone down. Her exquisite face was filled with horror. She looked at the treasure on the table in shock. She never thought that this treasure would have such a terrifying, bewitching power. When she turned her eyes again, she found that the cultivators around her had an abnormal blush on their faces. Their eyes were filled with madness, and they were no longer as calm as before. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly pulled Di Beichen back. Beichen, put this thing down. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen nervously. She was really worried that Di Beichen would be bewitched by this power. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen was also slightly stunned. Why? It's too late to explain now. If you believe me, put this thing down quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said. Even though Di Beichen's heart was full of confusion, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he still chose to believe her. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was the person he loved the most. She definitely wouldn't lie to him. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Xiaofeng and the others. Big brother, put it down quickly. Di Xiaofeng had just grabbed a treasure when he suddenly heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. He couldn't help but ask, it wasn't easy to get this treasure. How can I put down? Once this thing is brought back, its value will be astonishing. Big brother, just believe in Hongzhuang. He didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang did this, but he also noticed the anxiety on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Thinking about it, there must be very serious consequences for Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a reaction. Hongzhuang, are you crazy? You're giving up on such a treasure? Lin Qianqian was puzzled. Anyone would dream of having such a treasure. Most importantly, if they gave up on this treasure and the cultivators of other clans obtained it, then they would lose to the cultivators of other clans. This was something she absolutely did not want. There's something wrong with these treasures. Put them down. Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly said and turned to look at Di Beichen and Mo Yunju. Tell our people to leave the main hall quickly. There's something strange here. Seeing this, Di Beichen pulled Di Xiaofeng and the others out of the main hall without hesitation. Di Xiaofeng and the others were unwilling. They only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's decision was too strange. Beichen, if you want to go out, then go out. We won't go out. Lin Taxing couldn't help but say. These precious treasures were right in front of him. He simply couldn't give them up. Chapter 4908. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the surrounding cultivators all looked at her with ridicule. Bailey Hongzhuang, you wouldn't say such words just because you want to keep it for yourself, right? Nangong Yuqing sneered. Do you think anyone will believe you at a time like this? It's up to you to believe me or not. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. She really didn't want to save Nangong Yuqing. However, there were so many cultivators present, and she didn't want them all to lose their lives here. Bailey Hongzhuang, if you want to leave, then leave. We won't be fooled by your tricks. Xiao Sudong also sneered. Di Xiaofeng and the others still didn't want to leave after seeing this scene. However, they thought that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't lie to them at this time and decided to trust Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next moment, Di Xiaofeng quickly walked to Murong Jing's side. Murong Jing, put down the things and leave with me. Xiaofeng, are you crazy? There's so many treasures here. Wouldn't it be a loss if we just leave like this? Murong Jing rolled his eyes. This was a good opportunity to improve himself. Whoever gave it up would be a fool. Although I don't know what's going on, the situation is urgent. Trust me this time. We've been brothers for so many years, I won't lie to you. Di Xiaofeng said. Di Xiaofeng didn't care whether Murong Jing agreed or not, and pulled him out of the main hall. Xiaofeng, stop messing around. Murong Jing's face was filled with anger. If you continue like this, I'll make a move. Even if you do, I'll pull you out. Di Xiaofeng's attitude was very firm. He and Murong Jing were best friends. If there was really something strange here, then he couldn't let anything happen to Murong Jing. Bailey Hongzhuang's people immediately walked out of the main hall. In the process, they dragged the cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family out. They did not give the other party any chance at all. Even if the family members were full of dissatisfaction, Di Beichen and Lin Taxing still asked everyone to leave. Everyone had no choice but to follow him and leave. Bailey Hongzhuang is really crazy. How can she ask us to leave when we have such a great opportunity? What are we going to do about this loss? Let's have a good talk. If we leave just like this, we will definitely not be able to compare to the cultivators of the other clans. That's right, what should we do? The group of disciples were filled with depression. They even wanted to directly refute Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Di Beichen was the young master of the Di family, and Bailey Hongzhuang was the young master's wife. It was obviously inappropriate for them to refute like this. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was not until they had left the main hall that Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. Of course, Bailey Hongzhuang's group had caused quite a stir and had attracted the attention of some cultivators. Everyone had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had deliberately said this to distract everyone so that they could fight for the treasures. However, when they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang's group had really turned around and left without taking anything, their eyes filled with confusion. What's going on with them? Could Bailey Hongzhuang be telling the truth? Chapter 4909. Only after they left the main hall did Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. Hongzhuang, tell me what's going on? Di Xiaofeng immediately asked, not to mention Murong Jing, who was still glaring at him furiously. Even he himself wanted to know what was going on. Lin Qianqian and the others were also looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with burning gazes, anger faintly visible in their eyes. Obviously, if Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't give them a reasonable explanation, they would really get angry. Wife, don't be anxious. Tell me in detail. Di Beichun stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang. His gaze swept past everyone, blocking the furious gazes of the others. Noticing Di Beichun's expression, everyone restrained their anger. Look carefully at the expressions of those cultivators in the main hall. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reminded everyone to observe. What expressions can they have? Aren't they excited? Lin Qianqian said without hesitation. Anyone who sees so many treasures will inevitably be excited. However, when everyone carefully observed the expressions of the cultivators in the main hall, they noticed something different. I noticed that their expressions seem somewhat strange. Di Xiaofeng suddenly said doubtfully. Before Bailey Hongzhuang reminded him, he didn't notice it. Now that he looked carefully, he noticed that everyone's faces were filled with excitement. It was normal for him to be excited, but there was something strange about this excitement. Most importantly, everyone's eyes were dyed with a trace of blood red, filled with madness. Obviously, something was wrong with this point. After Di Xiaofeng noticed it, the other cultivators naturally noticed it as well. Immediately, a strange light appeared in their eyes. At this moment, another figure appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that this person was actually Chen Feng. Chen Feng. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. So far, other than the cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family, no one else had left the main hall. Obviously, no one would believe what he said at this time. Unexpectedly, Chen Feng had also come out. Moreover, he did not have any treasures with him. This caused her to be somewhat flabbergasted. Chen Feng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and cupped his hands. Thank you for your reminder. I owe you one. Upon hearing this, Lin Qianqian and the others' expressions changed. Chen Feng was the strongest among all the cultivators here. Normally, he was also the representative of all the cultivators here. Nobody could overlook his existence. Since he had come out, it proved that there was something strange about the main palace. After the Great Devil Sect's cultivators saw Chen Feng leave, many of them started to change their minds. After hesitating for a while, he decided to put down the treasures and leave. The stronger one was, the more they desired these treasures. Since even Chen Feng was willing to give up, it was only natural that they would do the same. Wife, how did you find out that there was a problem here? Di Beichen's deep black eyes were filled with doubt and astonishment. At this moment, he was also somewhat afraid. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, he would probably be the same as the other cultivators in the main hall. It's all thanks to the stone in my hand, Bailey Hongzhuang explained. Chapter 4910. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the others finally understood. It turns out that this stone has such an effect. If it weren't for this stone, I'm afraid we would all be in trouble. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with amazement before he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang apologetically. Sister-in-law, I'm really sorry for my attitude just now. Lin Qianqian and the others were also apologetic. When they heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had asked them to leave, they were actually very dissatisfied. Because there were so many treasures, it was really too difficult to give up just like that. Now that they understood that everything Bailey Hongzhuang did before was to save them, their hearts were naturally filled with regret. Hongzhuang, it was all our fault before. I'm really sorry, Lin Qianqian hurriedly said. Looking at everyone's apologetic faces, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. It's okay, you don't have to apologize. The influence of this main hall is too great. Everyone can't resist the temptation of the treasures. If it weren't for the stone's help, I wouldn't have reacted better than everyone else. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang once again looked at the treasures in the ruins. She really didn't expect that this seemingly risk-free ruin would actually have so many problems. This kind of danger was actually 100 times more dangerous than the ruins they had encountered before, because it could make everyone fall into a state of madness. Isn't the owner of this ruin a light attribute cultivator? Why is everything here so strange? Lin Taxing was puzzled. Generally speaking, light meant justice. As long as it was a light attribute cultivator, they shouldn't do such a sinister thing. However, they encountered it here. Perhaps all of this is deliberately disguised. It is precisely because this attribute will make us unconsciously lower our defense that it is easier to fall into a trap. Bang, bang, bang. A battle broke out in the main hall. Many cultivators had already started fighting over the treasures. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stood outside the main hall and looked at each other. This situation was really too strange. Mo Yunjue turned to look at Chen Feng and suddenly asked, Chen Feng, how did you know that something was wrong here? Chen Feng looked up at Mo Yunjue and said, I didn't think so at first, but everything before was too smooth, so I always felt strange in my heart. Since entering the main hall, I felt that there was an energy inadvertently affecting my mind. The cultivation method itself has the ability to sober me up. Ordinary bewitchment can't confuse me, but the power of bewitchment here is really strong. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice helped me and made me sober up. So that's the case. Everyone immediately understood and their hearts were filled rejoiced. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have this stone, they might have all died here. An idea suddenly popped into my head. Emperor Xiaofeng suddenly said, This ruin has always been releasing light. Maybe it's to attract cultivators and make them all stay here. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, they all felt their hair stand on end. Because what Di Xiaofeng said was very likely true. If that's really the case, then it's really too terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black bright eyes bloomed with a dim light. This kind of method was simply like that of a demon. Chapter 49:11. Everyone connected everything that had happened before and felt that this dazzling, holy, and bright ruin was exceptionally strange. I wonder what is the purpose of this main hall to attract everyone. Mo Yunjue looked at the people fighting in the main hall with a calm gaze. Although he could see some abnormal blushes on the faces of these cultivators, at least there was no danger so far. Although Chan Feng's personality was cold and arrogant, as the eldest senior brother of the Great Devil sect, he still ordered his disciples to leave the main hall. Although the Great Devil sect's cultivators were unwilling, most of them still chose to believe in Chen Feng, while some who had been bewitched still stayed inside, unwilling to come out. Regarding this, Chen Feng did not say anything more. As the eldest senior brother, he had already done his best. Some people had obviously been bewitched, so even if he said anything more, it would be useless. Moreover, this main hall was so strange. If he went in again, he could not guarantee that he would not be able to come out. Why don't we leave first? This place is too strange. Only by leaving here will we feel safe, Di Xiaofeng suggested. Previously, he felt that this was a paradise for cultivators, but now that he realized the problem, he felt that this was a hell that ate people without spitting out their bones. If they continued to stay, no one knew what would happen. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded slightly. They were indeed unwilling to stay here. Then let's go. Lin Qianqian and the others also took a step forward. Now, this ruin was a trap in their eyes. No one knew if they would lose their lives if they continued to stay here. They did not care about others. The only thing they could care about was their own brothers and sisters. Good. Everyone agreed. Now, they no longer had the enthusiasm for the treasure. This gloomy and terrifying feeling had already extinguished their previous enthusiasm. After Xiao Sudong obtained the treasure, his gaze fell on Di Beiqian and the others. When he saw that Di Beiqian and the others had actually chosen to leave, he felt somewhat strange. Most importantly, the people of the Great Devil sect had also chosen to leave together. This was strange. No one would not be moved by such a treasure, yet they chose to give it up. Could it be that there was something wrong with this place? Thinking of this, Xiao Sudong also started to doubt. At this moment, a loud laugh rang out. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard this sound, they could not help but stop in their tracks. When they turned their heads, they discovered that the body of the cultivator holding the most treasures was gradually festering. It was a terrifying sight. However, there was still an excited smile on his face, which looked very strange in such a situation. Lin Xianqian couldn't help but exclaim. Such a situation was really creepy. This person is really crazy. Let's go. Lin Xianqian could not help but wrap her arms around her chest. It was warm, but she felt an unprecedented chill. After the first cultivator had such a situation, the other cultivators also began to experience the same thing. After seeing this situation, Xiao Sudong didn't dare to hold the treasure anymore. He immediately threw it away and rushed out. His face was completely pale, and there were no other thoughts in his mind. The only thought in his mind was to leave this place. Chapter 49:12. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Xiao Sudong shouted at Jun Chenbin, but his footsteps never stopped. His gaze was fixed on Di Beiqian and the rest. Although both sides were enemies, he only wanted to follow Di Beiqian and the rest. Only then would he feel at ease. Jun Chenbin was also in a state of confusion. When he suddenly heard Xiao Sudong shout, he could not help but be stunned. He regained some of his senses and did not dare to stay any longer. He hurriedly left the treasures behind and ran out. Some of the cultivators who were fighting over the treasures immediately understood the problem when they saw this situation. They all ran out of the main hall as if they were running for their lives. They no longer had the desire to fight for the treasures. However, some of the cultivators who had held the treasures for a longer time had completely lost their minds. Even though their teammates shouted with all their might, it was still useless. In a short period of time, many of the cultivators had already rotted and melted into ghastly white bones. The scene was horrifying and bloody, sending chills down one's spine. After the other cultivators rushed out, they quickly approached Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Until now, they still did not understand the situation. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was the first cultivator to discover the problem. Everyone had already treated her as a life-saving straw. "Miss Bailey, what's going on?" One of the cultivators could not help but ask. He did not know Bailey Hongzhuang, but they were not enemies with the Di family. Hence, he asked. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "I'm not sure what's going on here. The only thing I can be sure of is that there's something strange about these ruins. We can't take the treasures in the main hall." At this moment, Xiao Sudong and the rest were all pale. The white floor of the main hall had been stained red with blood. It was extremely horrifying. Heavens, I never thought that this place would be so terrifying. Previously, I thought that this was heaven. In the blink of an eye, it has become hell. "Miss Bailey, you're really amazing. You actually discovered the problem here." "That's right. If it wasn't for Miss Bailey's reminder, I'm afraid that our situation would be even worse. We might have already lost our lives here." Everyone's eyes were filled with sincerity. Bailey Hongzhuang's previous shout had indeed had a certain effect on them. If it weren't for the fact that the cultivators of the Di family, Lin family, and the Great Devil sect had chosen to leave, they would have already focused all their attention on the treasure. Even if they discovered that there was a problem later on, they probably wouldn't have been able to come out. Most of the cultivators who came out were hesitant before, which was why they did not completely fall into the trap. When the cultivators of the Di family saw that their young madam was being praised so highly, they were all overjoyed. "Young madam is really amazing. She can still remain so calm at a time like this. That's right, I admire young madam more and more now. With young master and young madam, I suddenly feel that there's something to look forward to. Di Xiaofeng and the others also smiled. This was probably the only thing they could be happy about right now. It's just that we discovered it earlier. Is there need to be so exaggerated? Xiao Sudong curled his lips. Seeing that all the limelight had been stolen by Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt a burst of displeasure in his heart. Chapter 49:13. Xiao Sudong only muttered a few words, but he did not expect Lin Qianqian to hear it. Being suddenly brought up by Lin Qianqian, his face was a little awkward. Xiao Sudong, if I remember correctly, we are enemies now. Since you have come out of the main palace, you should go your own way. Don't be with us, it will be hard on you. Di Xiaofeng's lips curled into a mocking smile, his face full of displeasure. If it were not for the fact that he had a good relationship with the Xiao family, he would not have bothered to talk nonsense. However, the relationship between the two parties would only get worse in the future. I'm just saying what I think. What's more, there are only two paths here. I'm willing to take this one. What can you do about it? Xiao Sudong forced himself to be tough, but anyone could hear the guilt in his words. They suddenly felt that this guy was really thick-skinned. Everyone shook their heads. Not only was he thick-skinned, but he was also saying bad things about others. He seemed to be particularly petty. Then you take this path, we'll take another one. Di Beichun said lightly. Xiao Sudong's expression changed, and he looked at Di Beichun hatefully. This guy did not give him any leeway. Then I'll change to... Xiao Sudong did not care about his face at this moment. After all, nothing was more important than his life. No matter what, he had to follow the group closely. Otherwise, this ruin was so strange that no one knew what would happen next. If he was separated from Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, he really did not know if he could walk out. Everyone rolled their eyes and did not want to say anything. Di Beichun and the others were too lazy to care. At this time, they were not in the mood to argue with Xiao Sudong. After all, it was best to leave this ruin as soon as possible. In the next moment, everyone chose a path and walked out. However, after they set off, they found that there were layers of fog in front of them. They could only see within a radius of 10 meters and could not see anything further. How could this be? Lin Qianqian was shocked. She did not expect such a sudden change. It seems that this remnant is truly strange. I'm afraid that it's trying to trap all of us here. Di Beichun's deep eyes turned serious. He looked around cautiously. Obviously, this ruin did not want any of them to leave. Heavens, I thought my luck was too good. I didn't expect this place to be such a terrifying place. Then what should we do? Do you think you can make it out alive? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was equally solemn. We can only take it one step at a time. Everyone, try not to split up and think of a way to leave this place together. Hearing that, everyone nodded. At that moment, everyone's hearts were united. They all had the same thought, and they only wanted to leave this place alive. Wife, does that stone have any guidance? Di Beichun asked. No. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. The stone is still the same as before. Other than keeping me awake, it has no other guidance. It seems that we can only rely on ourselves to find a way to leave this place. A determined look appeared on Di Beichun's handsome face. He held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly and said, "Let's go." Chapter 49:14. As everyone continued to move forward, no one could tell which path they were walking on. That was because no one could see clearly beyond 10 meters. However, after everyone had walked for some distance, a cry of surprise was suddenly heard. What happened? Di Xiaofeng asked as he looked at the cultivators who were crying out in surprise. The cultivator's face was pale, without a trace of blood. He trembled as he said, "Didn't you notice that the number of people seems to have decreased?" Following this cultivator's words, everyone present was stunned. After carefully sizing up the group, they realized that there were indeed fewer people than before. How could this be? Everyone was dumbfounded. They had been walking together all along, but no one noticed when the cultivators disappeared. Why did they disappear for no reason? What should we do? An indescribable panic exploded in everyone's hearts. Such a strange situation made everyone's hair stand on end. As cultivators, everyone was already used to seeing life and death. If they died for no reason, at least they wouldn't be in such a state. However, it was truly frightening for him to disappear without a trace. It was as if there was an invisible hand surrounding them, and no one knew when it would reach out to them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. This situation was completely out of their expectations. Along the way, they didn't notice that there were cultivators disappearing behind them at all. Most importantly, it disappeared without a sound. There wasn't even the slightest cry of pain. That was the biggest problem. No matter what, they couldn't understand why this happened. Just then, Di Beichun suddenly said, "Let's put down all the treasures we obtained here." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Di Beichun continued, "There's obviously something wrong with the things in this ruin. There's something wrong with the treasures in the main hall, and there's probably something wrong with the treasures we obtained. The disappearance of these people might be related to these treasures. For safety's sake, let's do this." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded after hearing Di Beichun's words. That's right, this is the safest. She felt that everyone was in such a predicament because of greed. After what happened in the main hall, she understood this point. "Beichun, do you think that there are so many treasures in this hall that were left behind by cultivators in the past?" Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Previously, no one understood why there were so many treasures here. Moreover, these treasures were all real. They knew very well that the things here were not illusions, and they weren't in an illusion. It was impossible for so many treasures to be gathered in one place. Even if the owner of this ruin was incredible, it was still impossible to have so many treasures. However, according to Bailey Hongzhuang's guess, everything became possible. If that's the case, then the owner of this ruin is simply a devil. Di Beichun's face was gloomy. Such a terrifying method was not something that an ordinary person could do. Chapter 49:15. Now that they were faced with these treasures again, they no longer coveted them. Instead, they threw them away like hot potatoes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun did so, Di Xiaofeng and the rest no longer hesitated. Although the treasures were good, they still needed to be alive to enjoy them. The treasures here were so terrifying that they did not want them anymore. Chen Feng did not hesitate either. He immediately took out the treasures and placed them on the ground. In an instant, everyone began to take out their items. The treasures that everyone usually fought over were now abandoned by everyone. Let's continue. After making the decision, everyone continued moving forward. However, along the way, cultivators were still disappearing one after another. Everyone was even more nervous. However, at this moment, no one could guarantee their safety. Not only that, when they entered, no one felt that this path was very long. However, now that they were about to leave, they felt that this path was incomparably long. They had obviously walked for a long time, yet they still could not see the exit. Chun Feng's voice was solemn and deep as he reminded everyone. This fog seems to have the ability to devour elemental energy. Along the way, he did not use any elemental energy, yet he found that the elemental energy in his body was gradually dissipating. Now, less than half of the elemental energy in his body was left. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not look too good when they heard this. This was because they also felt that the elemental energy in their body was dissipating. However, no one said it out loud. This would only increase the panic in everyone's heart. Chun Feng continued, "I suggest that we stop and rest after walking for a while. If all our elemental energy is exhausted, it won't be good for us to stay here." No one objected to Chun Feng's suggestion. As the strongest existence among the cultivators, Chun Feng had a lot of authority. Most importantly, everyone's minds were already in a mess due to this bizarre situation. Naturally, they would listen to whoever had the idea. Chen Feng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. This ruin is very bizarre. Moreover, this path is extending endlessly. We don't know if we have returned to the starting point. It will be better to rest for a while and maintain our peak condition. All right, Di Beichun nodded. I have the same idea. For a moment, everyone gathered together and started recovering their essence energy. Chun Feng's gaze landed on the group of cultivators. Now, everyone should remember the people around you. This way, the moment someone disappears, you will be able to discover it. One more thing. Is there anyone who is still holding onto the treasures that they haven't thrown away? As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present shook their heads. However, among the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang still noticed a few cultivators who remained silent. Naturally, Chen Feng noticed this as well. He said, "It is your business if you decide to leave the treasure behind. However, if any danger arises, you will have to bear the consequences. Since you don't want to give up the treasure, then you should sit a little further away from us. Don't bring danger to us." As soon as he said that, the cultivators who were unwilling to give up their treasures looked indignant. "Chen Feng, what makes you say that? Exactly. Why can't we be together? Don't think that just because you are a member of the Great Devil sect, we are not afraid of you." Facing their dissatisfied voices, Chun Feng's expression was exceptionally cold. "Since you guys refuse to cooperate, this is how it should be." Chapter 49:16. After hearing Chun Feng's decision, the other cultivators agreed with him. "That's right. Since you guys want to keep the treasures, you guys should bear the risk. What if you implicate us? Now that you guys are about to lose your lives, you guys are still unwilling to part with the treasures. I really admire you guys. If you want the treasure, then stay away from us. Otherwise, throw it away." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and met Yi Hong's calm and wise eyes. She immediately understood that Chun Feng wanted to use these people to test if the reason why some people went missing was because they were unwilling to part with the treasures. This decision meant that they had to give up on the lives of these people. This might be somewhat cruel, but it was also the best method at a time like this. If they couldn't find a reason, even though there were still a lot of people here, by the time they reached the entrance, there wouldn't be many people left. Jun Shinbin was also someone who was unwilling to part with the treasures. He was ranked third in his family. He had always been suppressed by Jun Lingxuan and Jun Zitao. Naturally, his cultivation resources couldn't be compared to those two. The Immortal Cloud's secret realm was an extremely good opportunity for him. If he could obtain these treasures, his cultivation would definitely increase greatly. It was naturally impossible to compare with Jun Lingxuan. However, there was still hope for him to surpass Jun Zitao. He wasn't willing to give up this great opportunity just like that. "Jun Shenbin, are you crazy?" Xiao Sudong couldn't help but shout when he saw Jun Shenbin still being so persistent. "You really want the treasures more than your life." Xiao Sudong, from the beginning to the end, all of this was guessed by Di Beichun and the others. Who can be sure that all of this is true? Perhaps all of this has nothing to do with the treasures. Don't you think it's a pity to give up just like that? Jun Shenbin's expression was persistent. Obviously, he had already made up his mind. "I know it's indeed a pity. However, nothing is more important than our lives." A trace of hesitation flashed across Xiao Sudong's face. However, it turned into determination in the end. He was very clear that if he left the group now, it was very likely that he would lose his life here. Originally, he wasn't very familiar with Jun Shenbin. However, after coming to the ruins, he had always been with Jun Shenbin. Naturally, he didn't want Jun Shenbin to lose his life here. "It's only 5 meters. I don't believe that something will happen." Jun Shenbin looked at Chun Feng coldly before saying to Xiao Sudong, "Don't worry. I'll be fine." Looking at Jun Shenbin's determined look, Xiao Sudong felt a little helpless. However, since Jun Shenbin had already made his decision, it was useless no matter what he said, so he simply stopped trying to persuade him. After hearing what Jun Shenbin said, the other cultivators had no choice but to agree. Just like that, the group was divided into 2 groups. Bailey Hongzhuang also found that the energy in her body was dissipating very quickly. However, the ruins were filled with the light attribute, so the recovery speed here was also very fast. Closing her eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang began to circulate the demon summoning scripture, absorbing the essence energy in the air to replenish her body. This ruin was full of oddities. This kind of cloud and mist lingered around it. and the feeling of being unable to see clearly was really uncomfortable. Unfortunately, she was unable to decipher it at the moment. Her greatest reliance was this stone. She could only hope that it would help her leave this place. Chapter 49:17. Endless Treasures. No matter what you like, it will belong to you. Come to me. As long as you have these treasures, your future will be bright. Believe me, there will be everything you need here. A summoning voice seemed to come from the bottom of Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. Endless treasures appeared in front of her, dazzling with golden light. The greed and desire of a person would spread to the maximum. All of the greed would explode under this summoning. It was as long as she took this step, she would be able to obtain everything she wanted. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips unconsciously overflowed with a trace of smile. Everything that she dreamed of getting seemed to be within her reach. However, just as she was about to take a step, she felt that something was wrong. It was because of this uncertainty that she did not take the first step. It was this short moment of hesitation that caused a cooling power to surge into her mind, causing her confused eyes to shine again. After coming to her senses, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with horror. This kind of summoning power was really too terrifying. Anyone who was not firm in their heart would definitely be attracted by this summoning. Once they were attracted, the consequences would naturally be extremely terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes widened. Her beautiful face was filled with indescribable astonishment and horror. This place was too terrifying. Only then did she realize that many of the cultivators around her were at a loss. Some of them were even smiling strangely with excitement. She immediately looked at Di Beichun, only to find that Di Beichun was frowning. There was a bloodstain on his palm. It was obvious that he was struggling with all his might. Beichun, Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang called out and shook Di Beichun's shoulder. After a moment, Di Beichun opened his eyes and woke up from his nightmare. Wife. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him, his deep and charming eyes rippling with shock and terror. Beichun, it's great that you're awake. Bailey Hongzhuang heaved a sigh of relief. This place is too scary. Everyone seems to be immersed in the excitement. Di Beichun nodded slightly. The power of bewitchment is too strong. Normal people would not be able to resist it. What happened to your hand? Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were filled with concern. Although they were almost bewitched before, as long as they were not bewitched and left, external forces would not harm them. I always felt that this place was very strange, so I cut my hand before I started cultivating. The pain would make me more awake. Fortunately, I did so. I'm afraid that my reaction right now would be the same as most people's. Di Beichun furrowed his beautiful eyebrows, and his beautiful face was full of dignified worry. This was the first time he had encountered such a method. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. She sighed inwardly. Fortunately, Beichun had foresight. At the same time, they noticed that Chun Feng, Di Xiaofeng, Mo Yinjue, Lin Taxing, Nangong Yuqing, and the others were still awake. However, everyone's faces were very pale. It was not because of their injuries, but because this scene made them feel very scared. What the hell is this place? Damn it! Nangong Yuqing cursed. His originally unsightly face looked even uglier under his anger. Chapter 49:18. A trace of understanding appeared on Di Xiaofeng's handsome face. Previously, no one could figure out how those cultivators disappeared without a trace. However, after the situation just now, he understood. These cultivators were willingly lured away. In addition, there was fog all around, so no one noticed them at all. As soon as he said this, everyone nodded. This was indeed the most likely possibility. Don't worry about that for now. The most important thing is to wake everyone up. Di Beichun's expression was extremely solemn. There seemed to be no external danger here, but the most terrifying thing was the attack on one's soul. Once one's soul fell, everything would be useless. The next moment, everyone no longer hesitated and began to wake up the people around them. There was not much time left for them. According to the situation in the main hall, if they were bewitched too deeply, they would not be able to wake them up even if they wanted to. Qianqian, wake up! Lin Taxing hurriedly shook Lin Qianqian. Lin Qianqian was still in a state of excitement, and the smile on her face had yet to fade. Qianqian, wake up. I am Taxing. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not idle either. They were all desperately trying to wake everyone up. At this moment, everyone could only find a way to leave this terrifying place if they were united. The bewitched cultivators woke up under the shaking of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. When they understood what had happened, they could not help but feel a lingering fear. If someone had not woken them up, what would have happened to them now? After Xiao Sudong woke up, he hurriedly looked at the cultivators 5 meters away. At this moment, the figures of those cultivators were nowhere to be seen. They are all gone. Xiao Sudong cried out in alarm. At this moment, Jun Shenbin's figure appeared beside the team. His face was completely filled with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. We can't take those treasures. Seeing that Jun Shenbin had not disappeared, everyone was somewhat astonished. According to their judgment, Jun Shenbin should not be alive. Jun Shenbin, what happened earlier? What did you see? Chen Feng asked. Even though Jun Shenbin was very dissatisfied with Chen Feng, he couldn't care less at this moment. He only said in a panic, Ghost, there must be a ghost here. Don't panic. Tell us in detail what you saw. Xiao Sudong walked to Jun Shenbin's side and pulled his arm. Jun Shenbin nodded. After calming down a little, he said they all had strange smiles on their faces and then walked in the opposite direction. No matter how I called out to them, they didn't respond at all. It was as if they were immersed in their own world and couldn't hear me at all. Jun Chanbin panted heavily, as if he still had lingering fears about what had happened before. Furthermore, they're all holding treasures in their hands. Their eyes are bloodshot as they stare at the treasures. I saw that the treasure was emitting a demonic blood-red light. Didn't you keep some treasures as well? Why is he fine? Nangong Yuqing looked at Jun Shenbin doubtfully. Since the others had disappeared, it was strange that Jun Shenbin was still alive. I didn't cultivate it before, Jun Shenbin said slowly, feeling a lingering fear. Chapter 49:19. That was because he had chosen to place the treasure not far away from him. Moreover, he did not start cultivating immediately. Instead, he was still unconvinced by Chun Feng's words. Hence, he had been waiting. He was hoping to find evidence to prove that all this had nothing to do with the treasure. As long as he could find evidence, he would be able to reason with Chen Feng and vent his anger. However, he had never expected to see such a scene. After this scene, he immediately understood that Di Beichen's previous judgment was correct. Immediately, he did not dare to delay any longer. He left the treasure and approached Di Beichen's group. After hearing everything Jun Shenbin said, everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling a chill run down their spines. In that case, regardless of whether the treasure here is useful or not, as long as we cultivate, there is a high possibility that we will be bewitched. This ruin is deliberately using some methods to exhaust the elemental energy in our bodies, forcing us to sit down and cultivate to recover. This method is used to bewitch our minds. What should we do? If we don't cultivate like this, we won't be able to resist if we encounter danger. Panic and nervousness appeared on everyone's faces. An indescribable sense of panic started spreading in their hearts. All these situations made them feel extremely powerless. For a moment, everyone's gaze shifted to Di Beichen's group. These people were undoubtedly their life-saving straw. That was because they had all been bewitched, yet Di Beichen's group was still able to maintain their consciousness. As long as the other party was willing to wake them up, they would still have hope of surviving. Everyone, don't panic. Although this place is bizarre, as long as we can resist this bewitching power, there won't be any other dangers. As long as we work together, I believe we will definitely be able to walk out of this ruin. Di Beichen's gentle and magnetic voice sounded. Currently, the most taboo thing was to panic. The moment they panicked, their subsequent actions would only make more mistakes. Di Beichen is right. Now that we have a clear understanding of the situation, as long as no other tricks are used, we will be able to resist, Chen Feng said. Di Beichen, Chen Feng, we will follow you guys. We will do whatever you say. No matter what, We must find a way to leave this place. After the first cultivator expressed his stance, the rest of the cultivators followed suit. That's right, we believe you. I have to leave. I don't want to die here. After everyone recovered their origin energy, they once again began to walk out. While they were walking, the atmosphere of the entire group was very stifling. Not for any other reason, but because in this short period of time, the number of people in the group had shrunk by quite a bit. No one knew how many people would be able to leave the ruins alive. Most importantly, many of the cultivators' relatives had perished in the ruins. It would be strange if they were in a good mood. Fortunately, the cultivators of the D family and the Lin family were still alive. Everyone had their own selfish motives. Even though everyone had tried their best to wake everyone up, the first people they woke up were their own teammates. Although the D family and the Lin family had more practitioners than the other families, the number of people who were awake was also more than the other families. That was why they were able to wake up before they were completely possessed. Chapter 49:20. Hearing this, everyone's mood was still low, but at least they felt better. Compared to other painful ways of dying, dying in this ruin was indeed not painful. Because even at the moment of death, they probably still hadn't woken up from their happiness. Previously, I thought that this immortal cloud's secret territory was full of opportunities. Now, it seems that this place is also extremely dangerous. Di Xiaofeng's expression was solemn and complicated. This place is really too strange. I've never heard anyone mention it before. If you've heard of it, we wouldn't have been so unprepared. Lin Taxing sighed. This ruin had indeed caused him a deep setback. I'm afraid that all the cultivators who came here before have already disappeared. Mo Yunjue's voice suddenly sounded. His eyes were deep. If Hong Zhuang didn't have that stone, none of us would have been able to leave the main hall. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's hearts thumped. Indeed, without that stone, no one would have been able to leave. Since this was the case for them, most likely the cultivators who came here before were the same. Could it be that all the cultivators who came here before were annihilated? Lin Qianqian widened her eyes, overwhelmed with shock. Without Hong Zhuang's reminder, even Qinfeng wouldn't have been able to leave. What do you think? Di Xiaofeng said. Everyone did not say anything more, but in their hearts, they already understood everything. This was their fortune, because Bailey Hongzhuang was also here. Otherwise, they would have been completely annihilated, and no one would even know where they died. We have to be careful in the future. Who knows, there might be ambushes everywhere in the Immortal Cloud's secret territory. Since such a place has appeared, there might be even more strange things in other places. Di Xiaofeng reminded everyone. After all the cultivators gave up on the treasures in a ruin, everyone discovered that there were no more cultivators who inexplicably disappeared in the process of walking. Regarding this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. This was perhaps the only consolation that could be given to them so far. Under such efforts, everyone finally saw the entrance to the ruin. The entrance. That's the entrance to the ruin. After walking for so long, we're finally out. I want to leave this terrifying place as soon as possible. I don't want to stay here anymore. A look of joy appeared on everyone's faces. Every second they stayed here, the more they felt like their hearts were about to collapse. Only at this moment did they completely ignite their hope. Almost immediately, everyone rushed outside without any hesitation. However, just as they were about to step out of the entrance, they found an invisible force blocking them. Instantly, the smiles on everyone's faces froze and were replaced with nervousness and panic. How can this be? Why can't we leave? Could it be that this relic wants to keep all of us here? What should we do? I don't want to die here. Under this extreme fear, many cultivators began to lose control of their emotions and became hysterical. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, their moods extremely complicated. I'm afraid we'll have to put in some effort to get out. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were as calm as an ancient well. Her voice was calm, and she didn't lose control of her emotions like many people. Chapter 49:21. The more dangerous it was, the calmer they had to be. Only in this way could they think of a way out in the midst of a crisis. Di Beichen nodded. Since we were able to enter, we will definitely be able to find a way out. However, we have to think carefully about how we can get out. Mo Yunjue and the rest fell into deep thought as they tried to think of a way out. At the same time, the other cultivators had already begun trying to use their strength to break through this layer of restriction. This time, everyone used all their strength. The desire to live swelled in their hearts. No one was willing to stay here any longer. Bailey Hongzhuang only glanced at them and did not pay too much attention to it. She understood that this method would not work at all. Just like how they could not enter with brute force earlier, they could not leave with brute force now. Previously, when we entered, we waited. However, if we leave now, it's obviously useless to wait. Bailey Hongzhuang tapped her chin with her slender fingers. Her almond-shaped eyes flashed with a puzzled light. Master, is the stone still reacting? Baisher could not help but ask. As a contracted beast, it was not as affected as a human. Even though it had coveted it previously, it had quickly calmed down. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Apart from keeping me awake when I was bewitched, the stone did not have any other reaction. Based on the current situation, the most obvious manifestation of this ruin is greed. Di Beichen's thoughtful voice slowly rang out. As long as we don't covet anything here, it won't pose any danger to us. Perhaps we need to get rid of this before we can leave. I think so too. Mo Yunjue nodded. We need to get rid of the greed in our hearts before we can leave this place. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. This seemed to be the most feasible method. If that's the case, we can only rely on ourselves to get out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other and stopped hesitating. Since they could only rely on themselves, there was no point in talking about anything else. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and recalled everything that had happened in the ruin. Immediately after, the bewitching voice rang in her mind again, swaying her heart. Come, all the precious treasures you want to hear. I can give you everything you want. Stop struggling, as long as you come with me. However, no matter how bewitching this voice was, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was extremely firm. No matter how many treasures you have, I won't be moved. Everything I want, I will obtain through my own efforts. I don't need your help. None of this is attractive to me. You can keep your treasures for yourself. A bright light flashed in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang stood up without hesitation and walked towards the door. Just as Nangong Yuqing and the others were thinking about how to break this layer of restriction, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang directly approaching the restriction. Seeing this, Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but roll his eyes. Does she want to go out directly? With the restriction here, how could she go out? Just as he was about to laugh at Bailey Hongzhuang for bumping into the restriction, he found that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually passed through the restriction and walked out of the ruin. Chapter 4922. Damn, how'd she get out? Nangong Yuqing stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang as she walked out of the monument and bathed in the sun. Only then did he react. In the next moment, he walked out of the ruins without hesitation. However, the restriction was still there, preventing him from moving forward. It wasn't just Nangong Yuqing. The other cultivators had the same reaction. However, when they found that they still couldn't get out, they were completely dumbfounded. Why could she get out, but we can't? Nangong Yuqing frowned. This was too strange. However, as soon as Bailey Hongzhuang walked out, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue also walked out. Seeing their actions, Nangong Yuqing stood to the side and watched quietly. He didn't believe that the two of them would be able to get out. However, reality was cruel. This was because Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue also walked out without any hindrance. How could this be? Nangong Yuqing's eyes widened as he stretched out his hand. The restriction was clearly there. The restriction is clearly here. So why didn't it stop them? Xiao Sudong also had a suspicious look on his face. This was a little too strange. They must have found a way out, Jun Qianbin said. For a moment, everyone's envious eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Their biggest wish was to leave this terrifying and strange ruin. As long as they could leave, it meant that they would be safe. Even if they stayed here for a second longer, they would be in danger for a second longer. How did you get out? Everyone hurriedly asked. This was their only hope. Once Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left, it wouldn't be easy for them to get out. Standing under the sun again, the warm feeling dispelled the cold from staying in the monument, and Bailey Hongzhuang's lips finally burst into a smile. It seems that our previous judgment was right. This is the only way to get out of the ruins. A smile appeared in Di Beichen's eyes. No matter what, we're finally out. Mo Yunjiue's face also revealed a relaxed expression. It had to be said that when he was inside, his mood was indeed extremely depressed. It was only after he came out that he felt much better. Then, the three of them turned around and prepared to remind everyone how to get out. However, as soon as they turned around, they realized that the door in their line of sight had actually closed, and they could no longer see any other cultivators. What's going on? A trace of astonishment appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate face. She looked at the closed door doubtfully. When she came out, it clearly wasn't like this. It's probably because the owner of this ruin doesn't want us to warn others, so he did it on purpose. Mo Yunjiue's eyes darkened. The original intention of the owner of this ruin was to keep all of us there. Our departure must have made him very unhappy. If we can't warn everyone, will they know the way out? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but worry. Although they had previously reminded everyone of this idea, they didn't know if everyone could understand it. If they couldn't, then they would be trapped in there forever with no way out. Chapter 49-23. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment before nodding her head. Only then did the worry on her face dissipate somewhat. Indeed, everyone had been shocked by what had happened earlier. That was why they were unable to recover from their shock for the time being. Once they thought about it carefully, they would be able to understand everything and find a way to solve this problem. Nangong Yuqing and the others were standing inside, calling out to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. However, they found that the three of them did not respond at all. At first, they were extremely angry, but when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang looking inside and not seeing them at all, they suddenly understood. Are they unable to see us? Judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction, that seems to be the case. Could it be that we can no longer warn the people inside after we leave? What should we do? Everyone panicked. Everyone wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, but they had no idea how to do so. Right at this moment, Chun Feng suddenly stood up. Looking at everyone who was as anxious as ants on a hot pan, he said, "What's the point of you being anxious here? As long as you can get rid of your inner demons, you will be able to leave." The next moment, Chun Feng stepped out of the door as well. Unsurprisingly, Chun Feng walked out of the ruin without any hindrance. Seeing Chun Feng following closely behind them, the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two lit up. Although their previous understanding of Chun Feng had been based on hearsay from what they had seen so far, Chun Feng was indeed an outstanding individual. Do they know how to get out? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. I did warn them. As for whether they can get rid of their inner demons, that will depend on themselves, Chun Feng said with an indifferent expression. Chun Feng had an indifferent expression as his lips curled up into a smile. I owe you a favor for what happened this time. In the future, if you need my help, feel free to ask. You don't have to be so concerned. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She had only warned Chun Feng. If Chun Feng had not realized the problem himself, he would not have walked out just because of her warning. Hearing this, Chun Feng waved his hand. Perhaps this is nothing to you. However, for me, your reminders saved my life. Bailey Hongzhuang did not say anything else when she saw that Chun Feng had already confirmed everything. Obviously, the other party had his own insistence, so it was meaningless for her to say anything more. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjiue's gazes landed on Chun Feng. One had to admit that Chun Feng's persistence had caused them to have an even higher opinion of him. When the cultivators in the Land of Legacy saw that Chun Feng had left as well, their hearts calmed down. They remembered what Chun Feng had said before leaving. If they wanted to leave this place, they had to get rid of their inner demons. Clearly, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were able to leave was because they had broken through the demonic barrier. Di Xiaofeng and the others had heard the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, so they naturally understood the solution. However, knowing was one thing, and being able to break through the inner demons was another. The only thing they could do was to stay firm in their beliefs and not be bewitched by that voice. Once they were bewitched, death would be waiting for them. Fortunately, most of the cultivators were also people with firm wills. Moreover, after experiencing what had happened previously, they understood that this so-called bewitching voice was a demon-like existence. Chapter 49-24. After Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 left the ruins, they stood outside and waited. It was not easy for them to reunite with their family's cultivators here. Naturally, they could not leave everyone behind and act separately. Even though Chun Feng was a loner, he had no intention of leaving this place. As the eldest senior brother of the Great Devil sect, he naturally had the responsibility to take care of the other disciples. For a time, the 4 of them sat at the door and rested, waiting for the other cultivators to come out. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and cultivated. Although the situation in the ruins was extremely strange, it seemed that there were many gains after entering, but in the end, everything was given up. However, cultivating the power of the light attribute here was undoubtedly very helpful. Not long after, the figures of Di Xiaofeng and the others also appeared outside the ruins. "Big brother, you're out." Di Beichen's eyes were filled with a faint smile, and his expression was somewhat relaxed. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. "You have already told us the method to come out. If we still can't come out, what will happen? Although the others will spend more effort, I think they will all come out later." "Don't worry." Lin Taxing also spoke out. "If it was during normal times, it would be very difficult to break through this demonic barrier by relying on our own strength. However, after experiencing the current situation, everyone's resistance has increased. Judging from the performance of this ruin, the owner of this ruin should be of the light attribute. I didn't expect him to do such a thing. It's really lamentable." Di Xiaofeng sighed. If he had not personally experienced it, he would have found it hard to believe such a thing. In the past, I don't know how many cultivators have fallen here. Just thinking about the terrifying number makes my hair stand on end. Attribute does not represent human nature. Even if the owner of the ruin is of the light attribute, it does not mean that he is a righteous person. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. She looked at this kind of thing very lightly. Just like how she and Beichun were both dark attribute cultivators, they did not think that this attribute represented darkness. Lin Taxing nodded slightly. "After this incident, we all understand. I think that this ruin should really be experienced by the people of the Holy Light Assembly. Presumably, their thoughts will change a lot." "Actually, I think so too." Lin Qianqian frowned. Although the light attribute is indeed a very powerful attribute, it's still too high and mighty. Any cultivator who wasn't of the light attribute would have some complaints about this. However, even if they had objections, it was useless. I think this situation will change in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with determination. She believed that the darkness attribute would be accepted by everyone once again. Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. They looked at each other and smiled. This was their common goal. White Lion also came out very quickly. As a contracted beast, it would not be too seriously bewitched. Moreover, as a beast king, its will was naturally extremely firm. After 3 days of waiting, all the practitioners of the Di family and the Lin family finally gathered together. "Since everyone is out, let's set off." A smile appeared on Di Xiaofeng's face again. "This place is so strange. I think no one wants to stay here any longer." As soon as he said this, everyone nodded in agreement. A ghost cultivator is actually a cultivator whose soul hasn't dissipated after their death. This situation is somewhat similar to the soul that was attached to Jun Lingxuan's body. However, ghost cultivators are usually people with deep resentment. They are ruthless and have sinister means. If they can't find a suitable place to attach themselves to and other opportunities to strengthen their soul power, then they're very likely to become ghost cultivators. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.